from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 7:04 on LBC. Welcome to the programme. It's Iain Dale here with you until 10. Aggie Chambray is with me because we are going to start off by talking about today's Prime Minister's questions. I don't know how many of you watched it or listened to it. It wasn't Parliament at its best, I didn't think. It wasn't the Prime Minister at his best, shall we say, because, of course, yesterday he promised, or was it Monday? Probably both days. He promised that he was going to be different. He would change his act. There was going to be a reset. He would change. We would all see a different side of Keir Starmer. He would convince us that he was the Prime Minister to lead us into the next election. Well, today at Prime Minister's Questions, I thought he disgraced himself. Now, we all know that all Prime Ministers, it doesn't matter what their party is, that they will try and avoid answering questions from time to time. He didn't actually make any attempt to answer a single question from any of the three party leaders that asked him a question today. Let's take a listen. Kemi Badenoch zeroed in on the main issue at hand.
A few weeks ago, he announced a peerage for one Matthew Doyle, his former Director of Communications. Immediately after that, the Sunday Times published on the front page that Doyle campaigned for a man charged with child sex offences. Yet, despite the Prime Minister knowing this, he gave Doyle a job for life in the House of Lords anyway. Why?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Matthew Doyle did not give a full account of his actions. And on Monday, I promised my party and my country there would be change. And yesterday, I removed the whip from Matthew Doyle. I'll tell you what other action we've taken, Mr. Speaker. Along with the Safeguarding Minister, I and this government have introduced the most far-reaching violence against women and girls strategy. And I'll tell you what else we've done. This government has introduced a pay rise for millions of working-class women. What did the Leader of the Opposition do? She opposed it. This government's introducing greater protection for women at work. What did the Leader of the Opposition do? She opposed it. And I'll tell you what else she opposes. This government removing the disgusting rape clause that they put in place.
Well, not satisfied with Starmer's deflection, she doubled down.
The Prime Minister, sometimes likes to claim, as he just did, that he cares about violence against women. The truth is, he only cares about the victims when he's trying to save his own skin. They can shake their heads. We saw it with grooming gangs. We saw it with Mandelson. And now we see it with Doyle. Isn't that what a former prosecutor would call an established pattern of behaviour?
Mr. Speaker, I'm going to take no lectures from the Tories in standards in public life. She defended Partygate for months and months and months. And even now she says it was overblown. The Shadow Foreign Secretary broke the ministerial code by bullying. Boris Johnson kept her. The Leader of the Opposition promoted her. She sits on her front bench. Her former Shadow Justice Secretary complained about not seeing enough white faces in Birmingham, and she was too weak to sack him for racism.
And then the Lib Dem leader, Sir Ed Davey, decided he'd like a piece of the action too.
Mr. Speaker, to appoint one paedophile supporter cannot be excused as misfortune. To appoint two shows a catastrophic lack of judgment. The Right Honourable Gentleman once told this House that when a Prime Minister refuses to take responsibility, and I quote, "It only serves to convince people that things cannot get better, that governments cannot improve people's lives, and that progress is not possible because politics does not work." Does he still agree with himself? And does he share my fear that is exactly what is happening now?
Minister. People in this country, millions of people, have been let down for years and years and years. And one of the reasons was austerity, which his party supported. He should take accountability and take responsibility for what he has inflicted on this country.
touched a raw nerve.
Well, you can certainly tell when Keir Starmer's rattled, can't you? Though it was a question from the SNP's Westminster leader, Stephen Flynn, that finally pushed the PM over the edge.
Mr. Speaker, if I've just listened to the Prime Minister correctly, he's essentially rolled the same pitch in relation to Matthew Doyle as he did with Peter Mandelson, that they weren't clear with him. He appears to be the most gullible former Director of Public Prosecutions in history. But he has a slight problem, Mr. Speaker, because some of us do read the newspapers. And towards the end of last year, indeed on the 30th of December, having written to the House of Lords Appointments Commission, I received a response from the Chair, who advised me that as part of their vetting, they provide confidential advice to the Prime Minister on the propriety of a potential nominee. Will he release that advice?
Now, for legal reasons, I can't play you Keir Starmer's response, but what I can play you is this.
Can I just remind the Prime Minister we don't discuss live cases because it's sub judice?
The Prime Minister decided to have a go at the SNP Westminster leader Stephen Flynn over a case that is being heard next week in the Scottish courts. Now, that was the Prime Minister, a lawyer, a KC, a former Director of Public Prosecutions, being chastised by the Speaker of the House for recklessly invoking an ongoing court case in order to make a political point. I mean, how could a former DPP make such a careless mistake? A series of questions that had clearly frustrated him to the point of utter incompetence. I want to ask you what you make of those exchanges, because I don't think this is a Prime Minister that quite understands the position he's in. And it was interesting to observe the Labour benches during the whole of PMQs, because at the beginning they were very, very supportive of him. They cheered him. Actually, the Conservatives cheered him as well when he walked into the chamber. But as PMQs went on, you could see the government MPs deflating because they realised it was the same old Keir Starmer. There was no change at all. There was no reset. It was exactly the same as they'd seen before. So do you think that he's being honest when he says that he's resetting this government? Aggie Chambray, what did you make of it all? Feel free to disagree with me as well.
To be honest, I think basically everyone could have done a better job. I thought Kemi Badenoch, I actually expected her to go on different topics. Yes, probably she'd ask some questions about Matthew Doyle. I expected her to ask about the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting's comments where he had said the government had no plan for growth. I thought that would put Starmer in a pretty difficult spot. And also what she has been doing is the more forensic questioning that was so successful last week. I expected a bit more of that. So I thought her questioning was not as good as it could have been. And I thought I just wasn't exactly sure what Keir Starmer's strategy was. I thought this was a bit of an example of what we were talking about last night, of the let Keir be Keir. And maybe this was him being Keir, and he was sort of being, I suppose, had a lot of energy. That's a very polite way of putting it, isn't it? But it seemed like he was getting very cross. He wasn't really answering questions. It was effective up to the point that he managed to not answer some difficult questions. That strategy will not hold for a long time at all, and I think is what we call in the trade whataboutery. And I think, actually, I say no one did well. I thought Ed Davey, the Liberal Democrat leader who you just heard there, I thought his questioning was very good, and actually Stephen Flynn too. I think probably Kemi Badenoch and Keir Starmer both could have done a better job. Keir Starmer could have had a much worse time, considering how bad the start of his week was. He could have had a worse time, but he definitely could have done a whole lot better, especially because his Labour MPs were sort of gearing up to really, really, really support him. And actually, I bumped into one afterwards who said to me, that was so depressing. And I said, are you going to be able to sit behind that for 3 years? And they said, no, I can't sit behind that for 3 years. 18 months, we'll do 18 months and then we'll all agree on who's going to take over, and the whole Labour Party will agree, and then there'll be an easy transition.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's the Labour Party. Good luck.
But the fact that he made that, I think, awful error, I'm surprised it isn't getting more coverage today, about potentially having a contempt of court for a former DPP. I mean, it is unthinkable.
It was very strange, wasn't it? I suppose it might not be getting more coverage because it's difficult to cover and talk about it.
I mean, we can't actually play that answer.
Well, exactly, without doing a contempt of court ourselves, which of course we're extremely keen not to do. I wonder whether it was just the heat of the moment. He'd been questioned by two oppositions, and actually Ed Davey as well. It's the most critical question I've seen him do to Keir Starmer in the House of Commons. So maybe Keir Starmer just felt on the back foot. He's had a very, very difficult week and just, I guess, made a slip up. But what a slip up.
Well, indeed. I mean, I think it is literally unforgivable after the week or two that he's had to make a mistake like that and show that he was. I mean, he did what. You're not a football fan, are you, particularly? Do you know what happened at the end of the West Ham-Chelsea match about 10 days ago, where there was a brawl between all of the players, and Jean-Claire Todibo, the West Ham defender, the red mist came down, and you could just see it in his face. I mean, it was an incredible thing to watch, and I think the same thing happened to Keir Starmer today, but the Speaker didn't have the power to send him off.
But
Well, actually, no, that's not true. He does have the power to send him off, doesn't he?
He does have the power. Didn't he once ban Lloyd Russell Moyle from the Commons?
Yes.
The former Labour MP who took a mace. I couldn't work out, though, Ian, and maybe you worked out while you were watching. At first, it seemed not necessarily like the anger was performative, but that I wasn't sure whether he was actually angry or whether this was his new strategy and he was going to reply to those questions with emotion and dedication, all those words we've heard. And then it did seem to descend into actual anger. But I just wasn't sure at the moment whether this was actually a strategy.
Well, he's got to decide, hasn't he? He's either going to be angry, emotional Keir, or he's got to be the so-called decent, honourable man that everybody says he is. And I mean, I don't think he's a bad man. But he lost control today, and you don't expect a Prime Minister to lose control. And that, to me, he'd sort of plucked defeat from the jaws of victory, because undoubtedly, given the fact that he's still in the job, Monday and Tuesday were a victory for Keir Starmer. And I thought he was in danger of throwing it all away today.
I mean, total victory. And actually, I thought, as I say, I thought it would go better because Labour MPs were so ready to support him, more ready than they've been in weeks and weeks and potentially months and months. But there were obviously just really difficult questions for him to answer. And really, instead of answering them, he just didn't answer them.
And this whole narrative of a Downing Street boys' club seems to be taking on a bit now. And yet the replacements for some of these people that have gone over the past few days, they're all women. I mean, is that an acknowledgement that he did have a problem, that all of the advisors, and he's not the first Prime Minister to have this, Boris Johnson was always rightly accused of this, all of his main advisors were male. Is he deliberately addressing that?
I'm not sure he's deliberately addressing that at the moment, but it has been pointed out as a riposte to the idea that there is a boys' club, that, you know, the two acting chiefs of staff are both women, and then, of course, the political director, who's been there a while, is a woman. Now, the acting head of communications is a woman too. But there is still a lot of anger. There's a lot of anger from female politicians in the Labour Party about how the Lord Mandelson, the Lord Doyle situations were handled. One minister saying, "I'm angry, and how this is playing out is making me even angrier." And actually, there was a meeting that Keir Starmer attended today, the Women's Parliamentary Labour Party meeting, which was extremely well attended. And Harriet Harman was there, and she asked the Prime Minister to introduce a first Secretary of State again, and for that to be a woman, and for that woman to oversee a complete culture change. And that was backed by other female MPs. And this is something the Prime Minister said he would look into.
So you'll have a Deputy Prime Minister and a First Secretary of State. Bizarre. Aggie, thank you very much indeed. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call if you'd like to give your opinion on what you've just heard there from PMQs today. How do you think that Keir Starmer can reset his government? Has he got off to a good start after the events of Monday? And really, the reason I wanted to talk about this today is to point out the hypocrisy of a Prime Minister who says that everybody must calm down and be more decent to each other and wants to reset his government in a much more positive way to focus on delivery. And then he comes out with all that load of baloney at lunchtime. 0345 6060 973. You're listening to LBC. I'm Iain
Dale on LBC.
21 minutes past 7 on LBC. I can't believe people who text things like this. Iain, can you stop undermining Sir Keir for a change? What you're effectively saying there is that I should treat Keir Starmer like Kim Jong-un and just say what a brilliant leader he is, and all praise to Sir Keir forever and a day. He is the Messiah. No, today he proved himself a very naughty boy by his behaviour in Prime Minister's Question Time. If I think that he's done a good job on something, and I have said that on many occasions over the past 19 months since he's been Prime Minister, there have been things that he's done which I think he's done well. Not many immediately spring to mind, but I'm sure there have been some. But if I think he's performed badly, do you really think I should sit here for a whole hour and pretend that I haven't seen what I have seen, that I haven't heard what I have heard? That really is not my job. It's not a question of undermining Keir Starmer. There were plenty of times when, in your language, I undermined Boris Johnson, certainly undermined Liz Truss, and to an extent Rishi Sunak. I called them out when I thought that they'd done something wrong. So why on earth should Keir Starmer be any different? But I must admit, this is a bit of a narrative that's developing, that, it's the whole media that are just undermining a man who's trying to do his best. Well, I'm sure in his own mind he is doing his best. But if it isn't good enough, don't be surprised when people like me call that out. And let's face it, there are enough Labour MPs that have been calling him out over the past week or two as well. I'm hardly alone in that. Marita is in Lambeth. Hello, Marita.
Iain, how's it going?
Hi.
So the points I'd like to make are, with regard to his contempt of court today, he has to be held, he has to be brought to charge against it. If he doesn't, it's just more of the same. You know, if he's the leader of the country, he's done something wrong. Everybody witnessed it with their own eyes and ears. Something has to happen for that. And let's just draw a line under it. With regard to himself and how he moves forward as a leader, I think that following all the shenanigans of last week and this week, the only way for him to completely draw a line under it is to have a vote of no confidence and let the MPs come out and put their X in the box, say what they have to say and move on from that. Because this continual, drama every day, every week, it's actually really oppressive on people, like an ordinary person, listening to it. It's like, God almighty, you don't even see this kind of behaviour in a company. You would be out the door. You would not get away with it. And some of it is kind of can be quite funny. It's like, oh, what's the drama and, what's going on today? But actually, I think it's reaching like peak points where people are literally just tired of it.
Well, look, we all know that Prime Minister's Questions has always been performative. There is a lot of ham acting goes on, whether you're Prime Minister or the leader of the opposition. So I take that into account when I make the criticisms that I've made of him today. But this is becoming a habit now where, and I think the Speaker should intervene more, when he basically just throws it back on Kemi Badenoch and says, oh, well, the Tories did this, the Tories did that. He's making no attempt to answer the question that she put to him. And it is Prime Minister's Question Time, not Leader of the Opposition's Question Time.
But he's doing himself no favours because people watch it. People can hear his replies. And not only is he avoiding the question, in terms of the representative of the government, he's also a representative of his constituents and all of the MPs that sit behind him. So if he's not able to give an open and honest answer, like we're all watching this, A lot of MPs, I think, would be really fearful about their jobs because he's representing them every week when he goes up for a PMQs, and we see his behaviour.
The thing is,
it's just, I take the whole hamming it up and everything part of it, but it gets to a point where you're actually running the country. You have the lives and security of 69 million people in your hands. And this is what you come out and do and how you perform every week, week in and week out. And I think to deal with all of the drama from last week and this week, for himself, if Aggie's report about that MP was saying, in 18 months we'll just sit there and then in 18 months we'll put in a new leader are accurate, and I've no reason to doubt Aggie's report, why he should be knocking that on the head straight away and just go in with a no confidence vote. That's what I would be.
Well, of course, what you mean, a vote of confidence in himself?
Yes.
Like John Major did back in 1995?
Yeah, I think as a leader, right, if you're a manager or a CEO in a company, right, and you know that you're not performing because your KPIs aren't coming through, you will be having meetings to discuss what your future is going to be, or what you can do to change it, or do you need extra support or a better team and all of that. But ultimately, if you don't perform, you're out. It's as simple as that.
Sorry, Marita, thank you very much indeed. Ian says, on the contrary, Ian, I like the passionate tone adopted by Starmer. He nailed Badenoch. I think you are a tad biased. Well, you're not the only one to say something akin to that in saying that Starmer outperformed Badenoch. I don't think that was as strong a performance by Kemi Badenoch as we've seen in recent weeks. I'll completely happily accept that. But a lot of people who are sending in texts along those similar lines, I think that you're looking at it through your own political biases. Now, several people are accusing me of doing that. And I make no secret about my political affiliations. But I like to think on this programme that if I think that a Conservative politician has done something wrong or said something wrong, I will happily say that. I'm not that tribal that I can't see the wood from the trees. But judging by some of the texts that I'm seeing here, I'm not sure that is generally the case. Let's go to this one. No, we've just done that one. This is from Sarah, who says, Starmer did fine. The Tories are hypocrites, so why should Starmer even waste his breath? Well, the reason he should waste his breath is because it is his constitutional duty to answer questions from the Leader of the Opposition for 6 questions every week. I mean, again, what you're effectively saying is that he should just be allowed to do what he likes with no scrutiny whatsoever. Not while I'm alive. This one from Mark. I have to say, this issue around Starmer and the media's haranguing of him, whatever he says, there's always an issue. This is a trial by media. No, what you're talking about is scrutiny of what a government does. And if you've got a weak opposition, and let's face it, the Conservative opposition, maybe not quite as weak as it was a few months ago, but it's still relatively weak, certainly in numbers, then it is up to the media to provide some scrutiny. That's what happened with Tony Blair in the late 1990s, early 2000s. There was virtually no opposition from the Conservatives then, because again, they were in numbers very, very light. So a lot of the media took it upon themselves to be the opposition. I'm not sure they did a particularly brilliant job with Tony Blair, but there we go. Mark is in Woodbridge. Hello, Mark.
Hello, Ian. Good evening. I just wanted to say that, for me, it appears that Keir Starmer is the gangrenous limb of the Labour Party. The longer you delay amputation, the more likely the party is going to die.
That's not a nice image.
Well, it's an accurate image, I think.
If you say so.
They think they've delayed amputation now that will get better. It won't. It will spread. It will infect the entire body of the Labour Party until they get rid of him. What comes next? Who knows? But Starmer has to go.
Which
want to preserve themselves.
Which members of the cabinet do you think are most pussy?
If you want my frank opinion, most of the front bench of the Labour Party will be better employed collecting shopping trolleys in a Tesco's car park. That they could manage. The rest of it, I doubt. There really is nobody. This is the tragedy of British politics at the moment. There is nobody of any quality waiting in the wings. Nobody whom we can respect. They're all factional. Terrible. Angela Rayner seems to be the front runner. Frankly, she was better off as a barmaid in a sort of pub.
Oh, come off it. That's such a sexist comment.
She would. She'd be a perfect barmaid for the sort of pub that has bouncers at the door. as our Prime
come
Minister,
off it.
a national embarrassment.
No, she's not a national embarrassment. You can say what she did was embarrassing to her in terms of her tax affairs, and she resigned for that. But she was one of the few ministers to actually, hang on, she was one of the few cabinet ministers who knew how to pull the levers of government and get stuff done. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, I may not have agreed with what she did, but she was actually very good as a cabinet minister. Most of them haven't got a clue how to make government work.
No, absolutely right. They haven't. And to think of her as a Prime Minister representing this country's interests abroad, no, can't be.
Well,
I don't know who it's going to be. I really don't know who.
I can tell you're not a fan. Let's go back to that text I had from Mark there because I didn't finish reading it. He says, also, if it's guilt by association, where is the media chasing Farage in his association with Trump and his friendship with Epstein? Is that okay? Well, as far as I know, there was no friendship with Epstein. But, I mean, he's mentioned in the Epstein files. We covered that yesterday. So we haven't ignored that. But there is no smoking gun there so far as I can see, or so far as anyone else has discovered. Mark, thank you very much. We'll come back to more of your calls in a moment. So instead of getting defensive and lashing out, what should the Prime Minister actually be doing to truly change? 0345 6060 973. You're listening to LBC. I'm Iain Dale. It's 7:32. News headlines with Amelia Cox.
The Deputy Labour leader has told
7:35 on LBC. We'll come back to your calls and texts and WhatsApp messages in a moment. But let me also tell you who's on cross question at 8. We have the Labour MP Florence Eshalomi. We have Layla Cullingham, who is the Reform UK candidate for London Mayor. Stephen Bush, columnist and associate editor of the Financial Times. And Tim Lawton, the former Conservative MP and Children's Minister. So you can book your calls now on 0345 6060 973. And we'll take more of your calls on this question. Instead of getting defensive and lashing out, what should the Prime Minister actually be doing to truly convince you that he's changed, that he's got an agenda for the country, that he knows what he's doing, he's got a vision, he's got a narrative? Because all of that's still missing, isn't it? But before we come back to that, let's talk about this terrible double stabbing at a school in North London yesterday. We heard from Fraser Knight in the immediate aftermath. He's back to tell us what's the latest. Fraser, very good evening. Now, I gather the person that's been arrested is a former pupil of the school.
He is, Ian. We've been speaking to counter-terrorism officers this afternoon just to get some more information about this 13-year-old boy who's been held on suspicion of attempted murder. And what they've told us is that he was indeed a former student of Kingsbury High School in Brent, where this attack happened yesterday afternoon. We're told that he is British-born. He lives in the UK, and he was arrested, we're told, after a member of the public at a mosque in northwest London called the police to raise concerns about a child there. Now, of course, after this attack had happened inside the school grounds, there was a huge manhunt that was launched to try and to find the suspect. And the two boys who were attacked, 12 and 13 years old, we're told are still in hospital, but their condition is stable. They have very serious injuries, but they are in a stable condition. We've also been hearing more about the shock and the horror among the community around the school. This parent has two children who go to Kingsbury High, and he says they're completely shaken.
My kids are scared, very scared. One of them still doesn't want to come tomorrow, but I brought them here so that they can see everything is just back to normal. Hopefully there will be more security around, so let's see how she will feel.
Now, the officers who are leading this investigation also gave us some more information about what they believe happened inside the school during the attack. They say an attacker entered the building at around 12:30 in the afternoon. They went immediately up to the first floor and into a classroom. There, they say they sprayed a substance, not believed to be a noxious substance, at a pupil, before then stabbing a 13-year-old. They then left and ran down to the ground floor. That's where they say another another pupil aged 12 was stabbed, and then they say the attacker fled the scene. Now, the fact that the suspect isn't a current pupil, is a former pupil, has raised questions about the security of this school and indeed schools more widely. Parents really worried about what this means for their children. And this morning, the Schools Minister, Georgia Gold, told LBC that they aren't ruling out improving the systems across the board after this.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that, is already something we're very focused on, ensuring our schools are safe places and tackling knife violence. There is an investigation going on, but if there's things that emerge from that we need to go further on, we won't hesitate to do so.
Now, of course, counter-terror officers are leading this investigation. Iain, it hasn't yet been declared a terrorist attack, but we are told that officers are still keeping an open mind as to what the motivation was behind it. We're told that they're working through 30 to 40 witnesses, and of course, many of them very, very young children. This happened in the lower school with children in years 7, 8 and 9.
Fraser, thank you very much. That's Fraser Knight there, LBC's reporter, talking to us from Brent. Right, let's go back to our discussion about Keir Starmer, his performance at PMQs, his general performance, and what you would like to see change in what he does, what he says. This is from Paul, who says, I bet all of your advisors, Iain, are men. Disgusting. Well, I don't have any advisors. Aggie? Would Aggie like to be called one of my advisors? Would Natasha like to be called one of my advisors? Because they're definitely not men. Let's take this one from David in Sheffield. No fan of Ed Davey, but thought he delivered a really important, exquisitely crafted question deflected by a petulant Prime Minister with the most irrelevant response I've ever heard at PMQs. And there's quite a lot of competition for that particular accolade. Faraz says the PM misjudged his responses, which snapped when he saw Ed Davey rail against him, which I sense he found disloyal. Actually, I think this was for cross-question, but OK, we'll leave that open for cross-question. Alice is in Oxford. Alice, hi.
Oh, hi. Thank you for having me. OK, so my take on it is why delay the inevitable? It doesn't matter how well he answered the questions today at the PMQs. The reality is, it's really in simple terms, he should never have appointed these people. He should never have appointed Mandelson, and he needs to be held accountable for that. And if we continue to allow people in a position of such authority and leadership of our country, what are young people going to be thinking coming up? 20-year-olds. It's a farce. It's so wrong. And how about the victims? There's no point just having the rhetoric of yes, the victims, I'm sorry for the victim. Well, he wasn't sorry enough, was he? Because he was more interested in his political career than what is the right thing to do. And this thing about the thing that's going on, well, we can't do it now, there's no one else coming up. We just need to do the right thing.
Well,
and the right thing is he shouldn't be in this role. What he did was
all right. Let me put the counterpoint to that, because he has admitted he made a big misjudgment on Peter Mandelson. He's apologised for it. Even I would suggest that that's not necessarily something that should mean he should necessarily lose his job. Now, his problem was that his chief of staff resigned, or was resigned, I'm not quite sure which it was, he resigned because he said, look, I take responsibility for the advice that I gave to the Prime Minister on this, which of course begged the question, well, if you resign, then that leads to the Prime Minister having to consider resignation. But if you look at the reasons that Prime Ministers generally resign, you could argue that this wasn't up there in the sort of category 1 issues that should cause a resignation.
Well, that's where I think the problem lies. People like the elite, they play people like that. They're all in with each other. And then you have Trump. He gets away with so much too. It has to stop. He had the information that Mandelson was in contact with Epstein and after he'd been arrested for what he had done, and he still chose to hire him.
Yes, which was clearly the wrong thing to do.
Sure, it's not about the wrong thing to do. It wasn't somebody who just, stole a packet of crisps. He committed heinous crimes, and he put him in a position of trust for our country. It's a no-go. I mean, the thing I remember, I used to be a headhunter, and I recall interviewing people, and they'd had a great track record, but when it came down to how they did things, whoa, some of them were not good. You couldn't trust them. There's no point somebody, and actually he's not really delivering either, and that's a separate thing altogether. I would say even if he was doing a great job, stop it. If you want to have young people that are going to grow, you need to set an example. And this bar of morality just keeps dropping and dropping and dropping. And then you have that people aren't going to respect you. They just won't. It's like saying, it's like an alcoholic dad saying, hey, listen, but, don't drink. I made a mistake, but you don't drink. Well, they will drink. Mm. And that's what's going to be happening to the young people. People saying, yes, well, he made a mistake. Yes. You should not have made that mistake. Bye-bye.
Well, fair enough. I understand your anger, but every Prime Minister makes big mistakes, but they don't resign for a single one. If they add up cumulatively over a time, well, then we have enough Prime Ministers now. We've had 5 in 4 years. We don't need. A lot of people say we don't need another change. That would make people lose faith in the system even more.
But the thing is, the change is going to happen.
Well, I think you may be right.
Another 6 months.
Yeah, you may be right, and I think he's got a stay of execution.
Anybody with true leadership would never have hired him, put him in that role. Would have said no.
Yeah, but 11 million voters put him in that role.
No, I mean in the fact I'm talking about Peter Mandelson.
Oh, I see. Sorry, I thought you meant Keir Starmer.
If he was truly. So I listen to it all the time, and I just think, what is happening to people? Are we becoming so used to it? What's it going to be like in 10 years? 10 years, it's going to be even worse. That bar's just going to keep dropping and dropping and dropping because people aren't saying no. You're going to be Prime Minister, then you need to be 100% trustworthy.
Well, that is true. And I think Keir Starmer made a rod for his own back because in opposition, they kept making out that they would be whiter than white. And then what was the first thing that happened? He accepted £20,000 worth of freebies, of free suits and free glasses. And I think it's all been downhill since then. If you paint yourself as a saint, then you'd better damn well behave like a saint. And I'm afraid today's performance in PMQs showed that Keir Starmer is not just not a saint, he's a petulant non-saint. What's the opposite of a saint? I don't know. 7:46.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Britain is sleepwalking into a worklessness epidemic with millions out of a job on benefits. So says someone who should know. The boss of the nation.
Is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
7:49 on LBC. John said, the opposite of a saint is a sinner. Yeah, that word got into my head, mainly because Elliot put it there. He's temporary producer today, as soon as I went to the break. Anyway, John continues. And Keir Starmer's outbursts and angry, nervous stances during today's PMQs was nothing less than sinful. He's not a PM. He's not a politician. He needs to get ousted by the Labour Party. Well, that ship has sailed for now. Aisling is in Richmond. Aisling, hi.
Hi, Ian. Hiya. The reason I called in on this is I think because my mind has changed quite a bit over the past weeks, the past 2 weeks since everything kind of happened. Yesterday I thought that he came out quite well and spoke quite well in what he spoke about yesterday. And I felt yesterday evening he seemed genuine and quite honest. And then today I think probably showed signs of that it's time for him to go, even for his own sake. I think that to react the way that he did does show a lack of control that is kind of concerning. But you know, for his sake as well as obviously everybody else's. But obviously the PMQs is not a great context to look at because there's a lot of goading, and I think that certain people in there are just the way they speak. It's bullying, and that would push people. But you obviously need to be able to kind of maintain your composure, and I think he didn't, and that's worrying. But I do think since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister, especially since he became leader, but also especially since he became Prime Minister, it's been quite visible in his appearance how much more stressed he's gotten and how much it's impacted, I would say, nearly his health. He doesn't come across as that he's maybe managing it all so well. And I think for that reason, it might be time for him to go. But I felt very differently yesterday. I thought that it came out well, but then I think today it kind of showed that it might be time for it. But I do think that he wants to stay for the right reasons. I think that but I think sometimes you can want to stay for the right reasons, but you also have to take a decision that may not be your first instinct and accept it. And I think that's the difficult part. It's probably going to, but it's hard.
I think the point you make about how it affects a Prime Minister's health, I think it is an incredibly stressful job because you're having to make sometimes life and death decisions every single day. Now, I don't think there are many human beings who wouldn't find that very stressful. And if you go back in history and look at how Prime Ministers looked at the end of their term of office compared to the beginning, okay, we all get older as time goes on, but not many of them look as healthy as they did at the beginning. I mean, Boris Johnson, I think, is a good case in point. I'm not sure he ever looked particularly healthy. And obviously he had the sort of horrible illness during COVID as well, which certainly didn't help. And I think that really... And I think the history books will probably reveal that the overhang from that really affected the rest of his time in office. And I'm not making excuses for him at all, but I think it did have an effect on him. But you go back and, I mean, Theresa May, she didn't look the picture of health when she left either, did she? And you can go back to, I mean, Gordon Brown always looked as if he had the weight of the world on his shoulders. So I think we all have to have a little bit of sympathy with that because it's not an easy job. It was never an easy job. But they're not forced into it. Aisling, thank you. Let's go to Michael, who's in Eastbourne. Good evening, Michael.
Oh, hello, Ian. Great programme. Great to speak to you again.
Thank you.
Yes, I was appalled by Sir Keir's performance today, and I'm appalled to say that once again Kemi did a really good job, like she did last week, you know, and everything that Sir Keir said to me reminded me of Thatcher in her last days. I mean, it was all basically appealing to his backbenchers and not to the nation.
Well, in a way, they are at the moment his electorate. They can fire him, so of course he's got to appeal to them.
Well, yes, but you were saying about, you know, perhaps I'm paraphrasing you, but why should we have sympathy for them? They want power, and whatever effect it has on them, it has on them. But they don't just fall into these offices; they want them. They want power, and if you can't handle it, and if you can't use it usefully for the nation, then clear off. And I'm saying that as a Labour supporter because we've waited 14 years, you know, and the whole thing has just been a complete and utter disappointment.
In a way, I think that was inevitable.
Inevitable?
Well, it's inevitable that people are going to be disappointed because they thought after the chaos of the last few years of the Tory government that the adults would be back in the room and everything would be a little bit more smooth and people would know what they were doing and they would all be honourable. And then
Exactly.
then you get freebie gate. And I mean, Steve is having a go at me for even mentioning it. He says, Iain, you managed to sneak in Starmer's free tickets and glasses. Petty. No need for that. I didn't actually mention the tickets. I did mention the glasses and I did mention the seats. Because I think that was the one thing that really made people think, oh my God, have we been sold a pup here?
Yes, but I detested Boris Johnson from the very first day and year that I set eye on him, because I knew exactly what he was and what he was up to. And with Sir Keir, I thought exactly the opposite. I thought, well, here we go. Now, we've got an honourable man and we're going to have a clean sweep. And then the first couple of weeks, there was freeze.
Well, there we go. Michael, thank you. Let's finish off the hour with Anthony in Blackpool. Evening, Anthony. Good to speak to you again.
Hello, Iain. Speaking as an everyman, I sometimes think Starmer can't win.
No politician can.
Oh, yeah. I think some politicians are given more leeway than others. But to speed it up, would it have been possible, would it have been credible for Starmer today, after all the pressure he's been under, to stand up in Parliament in parliamentary question time and give a supine kind of response? He came out punching, Iain. That was his only recourse. Now,
well, I don't think it was, because that's what I thought he was going to do last week, but he didn't do that. He was very contrite. He was very measured last week. Now, and then he probably thought that didn't work for him because he got a shellacking after it for his admission that he knew that Epstein's relationship with Mandelson was ongoing. So that probably made him think, well, maybe I'll try a different approach this week. But this one didn't work either, I didn't think.
I thought it was his only recourse. You're a great supporter of Churchill. What would Churchill have done? He'd have done exactly that.
Well, I don't think he would, actually. I think he would have batted. I think he would have deployed humour to bat it away. Well, he was very good at that.
Indeed, he was. But yeah.
And I also think the way that he threw Matthew Doyle under a bus was, in a way, pretty despicable. This was a man that had served him in Downing Street for 18 months. No one's accusing him of being a paedophile, and yet he's being made out to be this sort of evil man because he actually had the temerity to offer support to somebody that he'd been vaguely friendly with when he thought that he might be in a very delicate mental state. Now, I would pay tribute to him for doing that. I wouldn't sack him for doing that. And I thought that was a pretty disgraceful thing for the Prime Minister to do. And I say that as somebody, I know Matthew Doyle. I've met him about 3 times over 20 years. He's not a friend of mine, but I'm sorry. I think he's been treated awfully. He was unwise to go and campaign for somebody who had been charged with a sexual offence. Absolutely right. That was a misjudgment. Completely agree with that. But to actually do what Starmer did today, I thought was awful. Anthony, thank you very much indeed. On cross question in a moment. Florence Ashalomi, who's Labour MP for Vauxhall and Camberwell Green. Layla Cunningham, Reform UK member of Westminster City Council. She is the party's candidate for the 2028 London mayoral election. Stephen Bush, columnist and associate editor of the Financial Times. And Tim Lawton, former Conservative MP and Minister. They're about to enter the studio, getting ready to answer your questions on 0345 6060 973. You can, of course, WhatsApp us on that number. You can text 84850. And if you're not already watching on Global Player, the LBC app, or the LBC YouTube channel, why the hell not?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, an 18-year-old female has been identified as the person behind one of Canada's worst mass murders. Police in British Columbia have also revised down the total number of people killed to 9. Most victims were found at a secondary school in the town of Tumbler Ridge, with 2 others discovered at a home nearby. Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney's spoken at the Canadian Parliament in the last hour.
To those families who have lost loved ones, this House mourns with you. To those who are recovering from injuries, this House prays for you. To the students, the teachers, the parents, every resident of Tumbler Ridge, all of Canada stands with you.
Labour's deputy leaders told LBC the whole culture at the party needs changing as the PM's accused of appointing paedophile apologists. Lucy Powell says she wouldn't have given Sir Keir Starmer's former aide Lord Doyle a peerage after his ties to a sex offender emerged. Thames Valley Police say they're making progress on whether to open a criminal investigation into Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. It's held discussions with the Crown Prosecution Service. Andrew's always denied any wrongdoing. And Dawson's Creek's star James Van Der Beek has died at the age of 48. He'd previously been diagnosed with bowel cancer. In the city, the FTSE 100 closed at 118 points at 10,472. The pound buys $1.36 and €1.14. LBC weather, rain in the north tonight, some showers for southern areas, lows of 0. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
Taking antibiotics when you don't need them puts you and your family at risk of a longer and more severe illness. Always take your doctor's advice. Search NHS antibiotics.
You saw me, walking along the beach. You watched me turn round the headland, and the tide, it cut me off. The rocks were wet, too wet to climb, so I panicked. But you didn't. You dialed 999 and asked for the Coast Guard.
Coast Guard.
And I just want to say, whoever you are, thank you.
In an emergency at the coast, call 999 and ask for the Coast Guard.
I'm a real snack monster. But Mum and Dad says all that munching isn't good for me. Around half the sugar we eat comes from unhealthy snacks and sugary drinks. If you want to change from a snack monster to a snack star, search Change for Life for loads of healthy snacking ideas.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 8:03 on LBC. It is Wednesday's Cross Question, your chance to question our panel on anything you like. I can imagine what some of the questions are going to be on, but you can ask questions on all subjects. On the panel with me, to my left, Florence Eshalomi, Labour MP for Vauxhall and Camberwell Green and Chair of the House of Commons Housing Committee. Next to her is Tim Lawton, former Conservative MP and Minister. To my right, Layla Cunningham, I nearly called you Cullingham there, Reform UK member of Westminster City Council, and she is the party's candidate for the 2028 London mayoral election. We're expecting to have Stephen Bush with us, columnist and associate editor of the Financial Times, but he's gone AWOL at the moment and we haven't got a tub of lard ready, so we'll just have to have an empty chair for the moment, but hopefully he will arrive momentarily. So your questions, 0345 6060 973, and do watch us on Global Player, the LBC app, or the LBC YouTube channel.
Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Cross Question. Watch live on both Global Player and the new LBC app. This is LBC.
8:04. Right, let's go to our first question. It's a text question from Martha in Lincoln. Is Kemi Badenoch right to call Labour a boys' club? Well, today at PMQs, Kemi Badenoch accused Keir Starmer of stratospheric levels of delusion, as she insisted he always puts the Downing Street Boys Club first. Following this, Harriet Harman, one of the party's most senior figures, urged Starmer to revive the role of First Secretary of State on Wednesday and appoint a woman to the role. Now, that'd be a nice role for you, Florence.
I'm very occupied chairing the housing communities of government elected me, and I'm absolutely loving it.
Be a nice promotion.
We've just got a new report out which your viewers would be very much interested in.
Well, we might have a question on it. What's it on?
It's on housing conditions, really, really big issue for a number of parliamentarians. We are seeing so many people still living in unsatisfactory conditions, damp, mould,
Anyway, well deflected. Back to the boys' club.
Areas.
Back to the boys' club. I mean, were you at this meeting?
I was at the meeting.
PLP Women's. What's it called?
Yes, PLP Women's.
And Keir Starmer was there for an hour. I mean, was that an accusation that was thrown at him?
I think we need to go back and look at what's happened over the last few weeks and essentially what's happened since we formed the government. I'm proud that, for the first time we now have a Labour government, because I know the difference that's making to the people that I represent in Vauxhall and Campbell Green. But is it fair for us to say that, there's a bit of a boys' culture in Number 10? I think yes. I think we have to be honest about this. I think the Prime Minister's accepted that as well. I think we need to ask ourselves when we are seeing failings in terms of some of the communication, in some of the failings in terms of some of the policy, whether it's PIP, whether it's stuff around pensioners' fuel credit. These are all areas that we care passionately about, but not engaging with MPs and listening to a small group of mainly men has caused this problem. And I think, Keir's been advised badly. He's recognised that. And I think what we need to see now, and what I'm hoping what we're going to see, is a change because, there's some senior women now in post. I think it's a good seeing Vidya and Jill in that joint post. And I'm hoping that, Keir will now listen to
the new
female,
temporary chiefs of staff.
They are. He'll start listening to the female. There's a breadth of talent across the parliamentary group.
But the buck stops with him. He made all of those appointments. So he must have deliberately decided, because I think Steph Driver, who held a senior position, who's obviously, a woman, she left, I believe, because she was... So Tim Allen was appointed over her head, so she didn't get the job, and so that was, I suspect, a sign that she thought that there was this atmosphere that only males get on. So this is not anything particularly new.
I think I wasn't privy to that, so I'm not sure why she left. But I think what we are making the Prime Minister know loud and clear is that we have to see a change. This cannot continue. We are letting so many people down if we continue facing inwards as a party. And I think you think of some of the appointments that have been made recently. I think there are questions which the Prime Minister has acknowledged on some of the appointments in the House of Lords. There's an ongoing investigation. I think that's right. But we need to ask ourselves if there were women, having the Prime Minister's ear, would he have made those decisions? And we're hoping that, we'll start seeing some of those changes.
Tim Lord and Boris Johnson was accused of the same, wasn't he?
Probably. I can't remember.
Well, no, I mean,
quite a lot.
Most of his main advisors were male. And I'm reading Tim Shipman's last book at the moment on the Johnson government. And there are a couple of occasions there when he lists all the people who were advising Boris Johnson, and he makes the point that, well, it's a bit odd that there wasn't a single woman, because if there had been, that decision might not have been made.
And I don't think it's just a problem with Boris, and subsequently I think it's been a problem for quite a long time, and there's more of a sort of chumocracy problem around Number 10, and a sort of inner circle of close friends who happen to be mostly men, most of the advisors. And of course the ones we've heard about who have gone are all men, but advisors aren't people we should be hearing about the news. Advisors should be advising behind the scenes. What influence women have in Number 10, there was Sue Gray there, was a high profile one, she didn't last long. I don't know. But there's more than just a gender problem in Number 10. There's a quality of advice problem, and the judgment of the person taking that advice and what he does with it. And that's Keir Starmer. I think that's a far bigger issue. Some of the crazy decisions they've been making, which again are unravelling with these latest revelations, and they're only going to get worse.
Layla.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, to be honest, I don't think it's a personnel problem. I think it's an ideology problem. I mean, you do have a female chancellor. You had Angela Rayner, who quit because of a scandal. You had your anti-corruption minister who quit for corruption, who is a woman. I think it is not a personnel issue. It's an ideology issue. And every week you hear PMQs, and it's just people defending the power structure as opposed to defending the people. And I think that's what people see.
God, you sound like Jeremy Corbyn.
Well, I mean, it's true that both parties are so embroiled in defending their party while the country's in a mess, and that's what people feel. And when I did campaign up and down the country in the last general election, the main message was not the economy or anything else. It was, you lot are in it for yourselves. And that's what they feel, because that's what you see all the time. He stands up every week and says, I have full confidence. And the next day that person's gone. And, people are asking, if the person who gave the advice to give the decision had to resign, what about the person who actually made the decision? There's no accountability. No one loses their job.
I mean, Reform have got a bit of a boys' club issue, though, as well. Most of the senior people around Nigel Farage are all male. Now, clearly you're not. You've come in at a sort of quite high level. And there are other women, Andrea Jenkins and one or two others. But most of the people that represent Reform on the media are all male. Do you think that needs to change?
See, I don't feel, perhaps Tim had the same opinion, I don't feel it's a gender issue. I don't care if it's all women or if it's all men. I just want a competent government, and it's the same in the civil service, and it's the same in everything. I just want to go to a meritocracy, and perhaps women or men will be better. But when it comes to public services and the government, I just want a government that delivers. Doesn't matter what gender they are.
But if you just have a sort of mono advisory circle of say you just had all men who all went to Eton, who were all married with 2 children and a Volvo in the drive.
You mean the Conservative Party?
I wasn't saying that, but do you have a Volvo in the drive, Tim?
I've never had a Volvo.
Okay, excellent.
Did you go to Eton?
And I went to a comprehensive school,
fine.
as did over half of Theresa May's cabinet, for example. So let's get away from the stereotypes.
But you take my point that you want a diversity of advice.
For sure.
Nigel Farage has rightly, in my view, bemoaned the lack of white working class people in politics. Somebody from that background is likely to give him very different advice to Danny Kruger, for example.
So everything you've mentioned is a background, how they've grown up, diversity, not gender. And that's what I mean. I do think you need to have people with a wide breadth of life experiences. And, gender shouldn't be an issue, I think, when you're picking your top people. It should be, like you say, a wide variety of life experiences, because that's the only way. We are a wide and varied country with many different issues. And only by taking those people into account and taking their advice will you be a credible government.
But there is a problem in these latest revelations are linked to sexual abuse.
Yeah, 100%.
And so there is the perception that if you've got exclusively or predominantly men dealing with that problem, then they're not taking it as seriously. I think that's the wrong perception in many cases, but it leads to those perceptions. And the fact that he's on this latest case of somebody none of us had heard about until the last few days of now Lord Doyle, again, it's abuse of children in this case as well.
Well, let's be very careful, because he's not being accused of anything like that.
His association with somebody who has been prosecuted for vile abuse.
To be honest, I would take offence if I'm a man, because it assumes that men somehow are flippant towards sexual abuse or the sexual abuse of women. My husband, it's a perception. I think men care just as much. They have daughters, sisters, mothers.
I was children's minister when one of my big issues was around safeguarding and grooming gangs, and I produced the government's first child sexual exploitation action plan back in 2011, before Jimmy Savile, before CSE became a thing, and I spent a lot of my time, the Minister of Children and Care as well.
But you take offence to that assumption?
I haven't assumed it. I say it's a perception is the problem. And at the moment, people are going by perceptions rather than the hard fact. And it makes it so much harder then for a government to get back on track by saying, look, we are serious about doing something about women and girls violence,
and I think by us continually talking about this, what we are losing sight of is the victims. For every woman, every young girl who's been brave enough to come forward, the trauma that they are reliving and telling their story, we have to remember that there are so many other women and girls who have not come forward. Yeah. Because the very people who keep abusing them, they are the ones that hold the power. I think about the report that I led on when I was on the London Assembly, looking at the issue around girls associated with gangs, where the police thought that those girls were gang members. Actually, those girls were being exploited. Those girls were being groomed. Those girls were being forced to carry drugs up and down the country. But they were assumed to be the girlfriends of gang members, so therefore they were automatically labelled. So we do need to bring this back to the victims. And the fact that we've got people in positions of power, because that's what it is, positions of power, and the abuse the whole scale and widespread abuse that continues to happen to women, we need to make sure whatever party, this isn't about politics, this is about doing right by those women and girls.
To be fair, I mean, with all due respect, I mean, we have that issue with the grooming gangs, and the inquiry that Labour's running does seem like a whitewashed one when you've got Anne Longfield, who was the child commissioner when grooming gangs flourished and did not want to have any mention of the ethnic background of the groomers, despite victims telling her that it was a necessary component to understand exactly
Well, I think
what
the
happened.
recommendations that Louise Casey is saying, we should mention that.
No,
And I think it's a case of let the grooming gang report.
Well, if I can just finish,
let that
you have a
inquiry
Labour
start.
peer who's the head of it, not a judge. In every other fundamental inquiry that we've had in systemic failure of the state, there has been judge-led. And also the inquiry has said that it will be non-exhaustive. And for me, a non-exhaustive inquiry is not after the truth, it's after controlling the truth. So there will be cities and there will be towns and there will be institutions that won't be looked at. And there will be victims whose stories won't be heard in this inquiry. And for me,
it's a bit early to say that, isn't it?
no, that was their terms of reference. If you read the terms of reference, that's what it said. It will be non-exhaustive, and they said they will not look at every
well,
victim
it hasn't
or every
started,
town.
so I don't think.
Well, I'm just
you
reading
can
the
make
terms
that
of reference.
Assumption.
Well, I'm not assuming. Have you read the terms of reference?
If they start, I haven't read it cover to
Okay,
cover.
well, I have.
If they start and they feel that they need to widen the scope, I'm hoping that they will take that on board.
as it goes now.
And we will make those
One has to
suggestions to
ask
them. But I think
why
it's
it's not
good that we are
judge-led.
now finally bringing forward that inquiry, which unfortunately we didn't see before. I think that was a big mistake. A number of us to recognise that. The Prime Minister recognises that. And it's about let's get on and let that inquiry start that work.
Why was it not judge-led? An independent judge. Why did you pick a Labour peer when there are questions relating?
She was Children's Commissioner.
And
I've interviewed her many times, and I really wouldn't go down that road. I mean, she is a person of integrity.
Why would a judge-led inquiry do better? Look at what happened at the historic
Well, because
abuse
they have
inquiry.
no party political affiliations.
And we appointed the government appointed a judge to do the historic inquiry, and she had to get, in fact, both female judges were appointed that inquiry, didn't last the course. There are severe restrictions on what a judge can do as well. So it's not the be-all and end-all. I have a problem with, again, the perception that the three people who've been appointed to that panel, at least two of them have very strong links to the Labour Party, and I think it's rather foolish to weight it politically, because it absolutely does need to be completely non-political, as Florence says. I mean, I volunteered my services, but I didn't get a look in on that one. As I say, I was dealing with grooming gangs back in 2011, way before it became a thing, and certainly before Reform discovered it as a political platform
To be fair, Nigel's been talking about the grooming gangs for a long time.
We have strayed way beyond the initial
It's
question.
not a competition.
No, it's not a competition.
LBC.
Stephen Bush, if you're listening, that is where you should be right now, because Layla's feeling a bit lonely.
I am.
Sort of with me on one side and an empty chair on the other. Anyway, he doesn't ring, he doesn't write. We've no idea where he is. I hope he's okay.
We don't need a Bush.
Anyway, it gives our other three more time, and believe me, it's difficult to shut them up anyway, so it's probably just as well we've only got three tonight. Florence Ashalomi is here, Labour MP for Vauxhall and Camberwell Green. I always want to say Camberwick Green, but that ages me, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Tim Lawton, who's, I think, older than me, former Conservative MP and Minister. And Layla Cunningham, Reform UK member of Westminster City Council. Do you know, we go for 7 years without having a member of Westminster City Council, and then we have two on consecutive nights.
Did you have Alan?
We did, last night. And she's also London mayoral candidate for Reform UK. I mean, are you doing that because you seriously think you can win? Because London people will think is not a reformy type place.
So I'm 2-1 in the bookies, Iain.
Are you?
I am. 72% of bets were made on me. The bookies put me at 40%. They put them at 28%, and I don't think it's about party lines anymore in London. I genuinely think it's people want change in London, and perhaps they think I'm a vehicle for that.
And do you think you stand a better chance if Sadiq Khan runs as the Labour candidate? Because he hasn't confirmed that he is going to run again, has he?
I don't think it makes a difference. I think people see what a Labour-run London is, and they want change, and it doesn't matter who runs, honestly.
Florence, do you hope Sadiq runs again?
I know that Londoners will reject the division that Reform are bringing in terms of talking down London's diversity, talking down London's greatness, trying to portray London as this crime-riddled capital city. And it's a case of that has no place in London, and I'm sure that Londoners will send reform pack in when that mayoral election comes.
Are you doing that? Are you portraying London as the crime-ridden capital of the world?
I mean, if we just look at the stats, we have a knife crime epidemic. It's up by over 70%. Rape is reported every hour. Only 6% get charged.
In comparison to New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Detroit, West Midlands.
When you have to compare London to Chicago, we've lost the argument. This is London. We don't have guns. Shoplifting is at an epidemic. It's a form of shopping.
Violent
robbery
crime is down, though, isn't
it? The only metric that's down is homicides, and that's because you can't ignore a dead body. 95% of homicides are investigated and charged. 6% of rapes are, and 6% of every other crime is, on average. And that means 94% of victims don't get looked in. We do have a crime epidemic in this country. And how couldn't you? I mean, you saw the burglary that happened in Richmond in a jewellery shop. They didn't pick Tuesday morning or a weekday morning. They picked Saturday morning, the busiest time for pedestrians, and because it's brazen. And listen, my kids have been a victim of knife crime many times. Masks, gangs, knife. He was robbed at knife point. Kidnapped for 15 minutes. It's a lived experience for me, and it's a lived experience for many. And how can you? People don't see police on the streets, and when there's a vacuum on the streets, a power vacuum, and that sadly has been taken over by criminals. And listen, you can say I'm talking it down, but if I go to a doctor and he tells me I'm ill, he's not talking me down. He's telling me there is a problem, and I ask him for the solution. And you're going to find that the solution is going to be reform.
Okay. Maybe we'll get into that a little bit later, a bit more deeply. Oliver in Neston has called in. Oliver, what's your question, please?
Oh, hello, Ian. You've got me chuckling with Campbellwick Green there. My question is, what does it take to be a credible Prime Minister?
What a great question. So I suppose after the chaos of recent days, would anyone else from the Labour lot be credible? Maybe Angela Rayner, West Streeting, and what about Nigel Farage? I suppose we can throw him into the mix. What does it take to be a credible Prime Minister? Well, Tim, you served under goodness knows how many. You must have a view on this.
2 words, Kemi Badenoch, who I think has got the qualities of a potentially successful Prime Minister. Authenticity. I think people are crying out for authenticity amongst politicians generally, and I've worked with her, and I think it's now showing she is the real deal. She's smart. She's prepared to roll her sleeves up and get out there, go around the country to find out what people are really thinking. And she's got integrity. And look, we've got a problem in politics generally, trust in politics. I'm polling that the ghastly Dominic Cumming produced in the last few days about people's attitudes towards politics, showing it, although every poll they do seems to show politics, respect for politicians at an all-time historic low. And I'm afraid the events of the last few weeks and months have just confirmed people's suspicions that politicians are a different breed set apart from the people, and the vast majority of politicians aren't. Florence, I was in Parliament for 27 years. Florence has been there for many years, both trying to do a decent and difficult job in the best interests of our constituents and the country. So a good Prime Minister has got to be convincing at setting about restoring trust in politicians and the political system generally. That's a huge problem. I'm afraid it's been a challenge for Prime Ministers and a lot of Conservative Prime Ministers over the last 14 years before this one, and going back before that as well. And it's not healthy for democracy when people have such a low view of politicians as well, because like them or not, politicians have the power to influence your everyday life, and it's better that we do it with people and people coming along with us than doing it to people, because if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
Hershey has texted in to say, but why should we trust the Tories again? Because it is interesting, isn't it, that although Kemi Badenoch's personal ratings have really improved over the last few months, the Conservative Party's polling is still relatively, it's gone up a couple of points, but still relatively low.
And look, it's, 18-20 months since a disastrous election for us, and it's going to take a long time to restore that trust, just as it did. I was elected in 1997. We had a record landslide against us then. It was nothing compared to what happened in 2024. And we had William Hague as leader. And I think most people, certainly now, would recognise that William Hague was a class act. Mm-hmm. And certainly his performances in the chamber against Blair, who was also, a pretty impressive character, were something to behold. He then went on to be a very successful Foreign Secretary. But with William Hague as leader of the Conservative Party between 1997 and 2001, in the general election of 2001, we made a net gain of 1 seat. So it shows what a difficult challenge it is, how long it can take. And you remember Mrs. Thatcher's days as well. Her poll ratings were well above the Conservative Party's poll ratings at many times as well.
Not initially, it was the other way round.
Other way round.
Later on.
Sure, but I hope that the party is going to catch up with Kemi, and Kemi will carry on from strength to strength.
Nigel Farage, Layla, said never trust a Tory, but he does seem to be surrounding himself with a lot of ex-Tories, including yourself.
For sure, but before reform, there wasn't really a party that had conservative values.
It was called the Conservative.
Well, they were kind of like social democrats. I mean, let's face it. They were a party of low tax. We had the highest taxation since World War II. Low immigration. We had the Boris wave, 6 million people. Law and order. They shut down the magistrates, cut police. And I wouldn't call them conservatives. Home ownership was the lowest.
You stood as a
been.
Conservative.
Yeah, because there was no other option, and I stood in my area to fight crime, and that's what I did. I'm not a socialist, so I would not join Labour, but I wanted to get into politics, and the vehicle to do that had. I think everyone who was in the Tory at that time, we hark back to the time that it was a Thatcher party, a radical party that was willing to do what it takes, that had conviction, and.
But in 2024, you were going to be a general election candidate until you pulled out the very last.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that I didn't view what the Tories were doing as wrong. And
why would you stand as a candidate to the Tory MP if you thought they were wrong?
Because there was no other party that had
stands as
intrinsic values. You can't make a change as an independent. What independent MP do you know that's been elected? And it's very interesting. Whenever I face a Conservative in a debate and I mention their record, their only comeback, it's quite amazing, is, well, you were a Tory. And it's interesting that that's the insult you throw because it's all you have. Obviously, it was insulting to be a Tory. But
anyway,
for me, you asked me about Nigel Farage.
You change your view every week. On the 8th of January, you said you wanted Robert Jenrick in reform over your dead body. A week later, welcome Robert Jenrick.
I didn't say it over my dead body. And at the time, I did not want Robert Jenrick in the party.
What happened in 7 days?
Well, I'll tell you what happened. He gave an incredible speech where he eviscerated the Tories. And for me, that takes courage to recognise that he did something wrong, the party did something wrong, and he wants to make change. And the difference between him and your party right now is that you look us in the eye and you tell us to still vote for you, despite everything you did in the past 14 years. I was on a panel with Michael Gove, and he sat there and he told me, we've had record achievements. You guys don't recognise that the Conservative Party had a record failure in the election for a reason. And the sooner the Tories atone for their sins, maybe the country can start to forgive them and listen to them.
Back to the question.
Yeah, what was it?
What are the qualities that make a good, credible Prime Minister?
I think, for me, it's someone who believes in the country, who believes in the sovereignty of the country. I see that successive leaders have given away our sovereignty for the aim of global partnerships, and sometimes those global partnerships have not been for the benefit of the country. And one that is not afraid and has the courage to say, I'm going to put the people of this country first, and I'm going to put the country first no matter what it takes. And that's what I feel Nigel does.
Okay, Florence?
I think I agree with some of the points that Tim outlined in terms of someone who's authentic, someone who cares passionately. And I think also, following on from some of the events we saw with the last government and some of the mistakes, let's be honest, that this government have now made, someone who will recognise that and actually want to make the changes. So for me, it's about, it's not just about the words, it's about the deeds.
Did you see that?
Put that in place?
Did you see that in Keir Starmer's performance at PMQs today?
I think at PMQs doesn't really capture what the role of a Prime Minister is. It's a half an hour debate where we know it doesn't reflect the best of Parliament. Anyone who's been in PMQs, whether you're an audience, whether you're a parliamentarian, it doesn't capture what MPs do, because there are many other debates where you see both the Prime Minister or the Leader of the Opposition and other politicians really debating some of the really serious issues that the country is facing, coming to a consensus. We do agree as well. All of that isn't shown in that 30-minute Punch and Judy element
when you've
of
survived by
PMQs.
the skin of your teeth and you say you're going to reset, you're going to do things differently, you're going to listen to the PLP and all the rest of it, and then you put in a performance that was, well, performative. I mean, that's not unusual in PMQs, it has to be said, and actually almost prejudice a court case as a former head of the Crown Prosecution Service.
And I think
that is not good.
And I think it goes back to what I mentioned about the atmosphere in PMQs. It's, we're all human. We make mistakes. So I think, the Prime Minister probably caught himself off guard then in terms of mentioning that case. I've had to correct myself on points of orders before. It's human nature. I don't think PMQs brings out the qualities and the credibility of what we want to see.
But the trouble is, it's what most people
in
see.
a Prime Minister.
It's what most people watch. I mean, I'm sure you're the same. I had more requests for people to come to PMQs than anything else in Parliament, and people see it. And today, he was just really angry and uncontrolled. And Kemi didn't ask difficult questions. She was calm, she was forensic, and came up with a series of perfectly calm, reasonable questions. And he lost his rag. And then he lost it to the SNP as well, and then he had to be...
And Ed Davey. I mean, he was actually, I thought, gratuitously insulting to Ed Davey, somebody who's actually normally quite kind to him.
And when you've just had all this flat thrown at you with justification, you need to be a bit more ameliorative rather than trying to blame everybody else and angry.
I think PMQs are so performative. It literally is just protecting your own power base. I think people would be very happy with Keir Starmer if he delivered what he said he would. If the country was doing well, PMQs wouldn't matter. But the fact that they put so much weight on PMQs and so little weight on what's actually going on in the country is a problem. I think you have to stop performing for each other and performing for the country.
I'll tell you what, I'd love to see you perform at PMQs.
Love it.
I think that would be box office.
That would be fun.
So in a way, I hope you don't win in 2028, so you can then stand in the general election and ask questions in PMQs. Anyway, more questions to come with our three-person panel. It's 8:34. News headlines with Daryl Jackson.
Officials in Canada have named 18-year-old Jessie Van Rootselaar as the attack.
6060973.
8:37. Someone says, Iain, come on, can you stop interrupting Layla, please, as she's the only one who's speaking truth?
Wow.
Well,
who would have thought on LBC?
Everybody, what do you mean?
Nothing meant, nothing intended.
I'm not sure about that one. Anyway, we have Layla Cunningham with us. She is the Reform UK's party candidate for 2028 London Mayor. Florence Eshalomi is Labour MP for Vauxhall and Camberwell Green. Interested in succeeding Sadiq if he stood down?
I am so happy to be the MP
for
where I live and represent, and I'm busy doing that.
Okay.
There's no vacancy.
Now, Tim Lawton, you were scuppered in your mayoral ambitions, weren't you?
Well, they've abandoned the elections. Labour's cancelled all the elections in Sussex, so it won't happen until 2028, if at all.
And will you run then?
We'll see. It's a long way. I mean, anything can happen between now and then anyway. But it's a job I quite fancied.
Right, a text question from Esther in Abergavenny. Would the panel agree with the Manchester United boss Sir Jim Ratcliffe that the UK has become colonised by immigrants? The billionaire Sir Jim Ratcliffe has claimed that the UK is being colonised by immigrants. In an interview today, he falsely claimed that 12 million people had migrated to the UK in the last 12 years. We should point out, of course, that Sir Jim has colonised Monaco himself.
Yes.
Layla.
Be a tax exile in Monaco.
Yes.
Has it been? No, I don't think it hasn't been colonised by immigrants, but I do think that some people, depending where you are in the country, perhaps feel that it's no longer a country that they recognise. And you do speak to them, they do find that there's been a we have had mass migration, and it's been so quick and so intense that there hasn't been a request on those that arrive to integrate and assimilate, and that has fractured cohesion within certain parts of the country.
Okay, Florence?
I haven't seen the article, and I think, frankly, it's just wrong. My understanding, I'm trying to think, the last census, 2021?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it was about 82% whites in the UK, about 18% BME. So this notion that, the UK has been taken over is frankly incorrect. And I think it's about how we recognise that in some parts of the country, we may have an issue in terms of illegal immigration, but actually we need to talk up the benefits of migration and talk about the benefits that many people from such different diverse backgrounds have brought to the country. I think about my own constituency where I could walk into a classroom, any one of our primary schools, you'll hear over 50 languages. Those children are contributing to UK life. They're enriching UK life. And I think we need to get away from this division and making out the othering of people who may look and sound different to us, and actually celebrate diversity in all its forms.
Because I think one of the points he was making is that I don't think I'm doing him a disservice here, but he was saying, well, they're costing the country a huge amount of money with this level of illegal migration. But it's interesting that you've said what you've said, because there are so few politicians from any party who ever explain any benefits of immigration at all.
You just have to look at whether it's our food, whether it's our music, our culture. St Thomas's Hospital is in my constituency. The great statue of the late Mary Seacole stands tall outside that hospital. If we were to take out, many politicians have had operations there. If we were to take out a number of people who've made the UK their home, this country would be far poorer. Not just in terms of economics, but the rich culture that they bring. And we talk about people who've come to make the UK their home as if they're sponging off the state. They pay their taxes. They are contributing. They want to be part of the UK. They are contributing and they want to be part of the UK. And we need to make sure we are celebrating that instead of this wrong and false narrative, which, frankly, Layla, is being pushed by reform. And it's causing big issues in places like London. And that's why I'm saying, Londoners will reject that division and hate because there's no place for it whatsoever.
You know what Londoners do reject is working very hard and giving half their money to the government and not getting anything in return. Public services are the worst they've ever been. Taxes are
in London, they're getting free school meals.
Are you going to interrupt me every time I speak? Taxes are the highest. They don't want, you don't get people out of poverty by giving government handouts. You get them out of poverty by giving them opportunity and allowing them
someone who had a lifelong disease,
allowing them to
who could not work, who would have wanted to work, but she had a lifelong disease which stopped her from working. And she was on benefits.
And that's why we have
I was a child that was on free school meals at school.
I'm not saying.
And I'm thankful. And now, as an adult, I'm paying my taxes so that other people in a similar situation that I went through as a childhood can now benefit from that.
And we have
what it's called. It's called redistribution. It's called the broadest, the people with the broadest shoulders helping others.
The state
It's called helping people when they are down. The state. It's called having a safety net.
I mean, seriously.
Let Layla come back.
The state doesn't get to redistribute wealth. You should create wealth. You should help people create their own wealth and stand on their own 2 feet. What we have now,
people who have emigrated to this country are creating wealth in
since
the UK.
2008, we have had stagnant wages, but taxes have gone up, prices have gone up, rent has gone up. And the reason why we have stagnant wages is that we have imported foreign cheap labour, and the wages are so cheap that they cannot support themselves. And what you have is the British taxpayer is supporting those that have just arrived in the country because they cannot support themselves. And that is a government policy. You do have foreigners who enter this country who do have access to welfare and benefits, and British people find that offensive and they find that unfair. If I go to a different country, I cannot claim welfare. You know that refugees in some councils in London go to the top of the housing list.
Immigration are automatically
able
to claim benefits.
No, I said
that's incorrect.
Well, they get housing.
That's incorrect.
They get housing.
They
do get housing. Refugees don't get housing.
That's incorrect.
Are you saying refugees? Are you saying refugees?
You are saying
where are they housed?
Benefits.
Where are they housed? Is housing not a benefit?
That's incorrect.
Is housing a benefit, Florence?
Yeah, because we should help people who are destitute.
So they do claim benefits, number one. They have legal aid should they commit a crime. That is all paid by the taxpayer and the British taxpayer, and we have too much.
You can't tar all immigrants with that brush.
I didn't say that. I didn't say all. I'm saying that we have. No, I'm saying that we've had mass migration.
You really have. And the problem is that if you paint all people...
I didn't say
we both heard you say it.
obviously, listen, I said that we have too many immigrants coming in and it is costing the taxpayer too much and we can no longer afford it. It is as simple as that. You want to argue with me or not, the facts are there. We've had people, we've relied on foreign cheap
why
labour.
in the middle of all of that can you not bring yourself to say, but most immigrants actually do the right thing. They come here for the right reasons. Of course there are some that sponge off the state.
But
nobody's arguing
I'm not
with
saying
that.
coming here is not for the right reason. I don't blame that. My mum came here. She's an immigrant. But what I'm saying is you do have, whether it's the right reason or not, the fact of the matter is that the state cannot afford to pay for all the migrants that came in under the Tories.
I think it's time we heard from Tim.
I mean, this is where, frankly, reform speaks with forked tongue, because what Layla did effectively say is since 2008, it's because of all the migrants coming here that there's been no growth in the economy, and the economy in the state, it is. So it's this trying to shift...
That's your conclusion.
You've had quite a go.
Layla, come on.
You've had quite a go. So trying to shift all the blame and this... this platform...
I'm going to defend myself. The question was about
Layla,
immigrants.
will you please let him speak?
She keeps. This is what reform do all the time. They keep backtracking, but it's this insidious narrative, I'm afraid, that everything will be so much better if we didn't have all these immigrants coming here. Now, we've got a problem with immigration, and one of the biggest problems with immigration is trying to close down any debate on immigration. I'm afraid that's what Labour have done for too long. So anybody who queries levels of immigration, which are too high, what we're doing about the boats and everything, is written off as racist. These are genuine concerns. Now, in my part of the world, in Sussex at the moment, we've got a lot of very unhappy and worried people around Crowborough, where the government are taking over an army training camp to house 600 migrants coming over in
just
small
down the road from me.
Very close to you as well. And you know the real challenge it's posing and how people are genuinely worried. There are people who are taking advantage of that on a political platform. But I've been speaking to Nuz Ghani, who's been out on some of the demonstrations with genuine residents who've got genuine fears. They're not part of the Tommy Robinson brigade. I'm afraid some reform who try and hijack some of these protests as well. But the fact is that we have had too much immigration, but the real issue has been we've had too much illegal immigration, and that really, quite rightly, pisses people off. And the failure...
I apologise on Tim's behalf for that word.
Miffs people terribly. And the last government should have been tougher. The Rwanda scheme was, frankly, the only legitimate type of scheme where you need a third country to displace them to, because you can't just stop them coming across the channel unless the French agree to it, and of course they won't. But when people see them coming across in small boats, mostly working-age young men, who we then accommodate, be it in hotels or camps or houses, when we have a housing crisis in this country where they do qualify for various benefits and can be here for years and years because of the appeal process, people think, well, hold on, why are we paying for all of this? And that is a genuine grievance, and one that we should be able to discuss and debate.
30-second response, because we need to go to a break.
Problems on that.
I've said my piece. Obviously, you don't agree with me. You ask the British people, they do think there's been too much legal immigration. Of course, illegal migration is a huge problem, and it flourished under the Tories, and it's flourishing under Labour. We've had record amount of people, and the reason is that you both both your parties refuse to treat illegal immigrants as criminals when they arrive. It is illegal to enter our country.
We changed the law
illegally.
to make that expressively so. The 22 Act made it a criminal offence to come here in a small boat.
And do you know how many was prosecuted under your government for illegal immigration?
It had only just come in.
1%, because
it had only just come in. We changed the law to do that.
Who cares about the law? If the law's not implemented, who cares about it? You didn't have the political will to implement it. Only 1% of illegal migrants were prosecuted under that law.
We changed the law in 2022.
All performative to change the law, not implemented.
Immediately reversed that, so it's now no longer a criminal offence to come here.
It's 8:49. Let's have a break and some chamomile tea.
On the latest episode of The Newsagents.
Why has Keir Starmer appointed Matthew Doyle to the House of Lords? Does he keep making the same mistake with people who...
Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
Well, it's a feisty cross question tonight, even though we've only got three panellists, because one of them still hasn't turned up. We're a bit concerned, actually.
Hashtag where's Stephen?
Anyway.
Hashtag Uniparty versus Layla. Had to get that in there.
That is the voice of Layla Cunningham, making her second and possibly final appearance. No, I don't mean that at all. No, because we love you, Layla. She is
#silence.
She is Reform UK's candidate for the 2028 London mayoral election
at the moment.
So, Tim Lawton.
You must know something I don't.
Former Conservative MP and Minister, and Florence Eshalomi is Labour MP for Vauxhall and Camberwell Green. Chris is in Richmond. Hello, Chris.
Good evening, panel and Iain. Does the panel think that Nigel Farage and Reform's desire for an end of working from home would be a vote winner, especially for single parents and those with caring responsibilities?
Layla.
Iain, go on. Listen, I think he was talking about the civil service, and I know when I worked at the CPS, we had a huge building in Petit France, and we only had to come to the office once a week. And it was a massive waste of time. And I only know from my experience that working from home, there are distractions, and when you're on the clock, when people are, you exchange ideas. If I had a case that I had to discuss, it was more productive. And I think what he was talking about was the civil service, and the civil service is paid by the taxpayer, and we have to treat every penny of the taxpayer money as gold. And if you are on the public's, if you're being paid for by the public, I think you should work in the office. Granted, it's up to private companies, whatever they do with them. But Nigel was, referring to the public sector.
He wasn't.
So you think it would be okay for some of the care workers, teaching assistants, teachers, doctors, nurses?
How can you be a teacher and work from home?
A number of teachers do.
How can you be a doctor and work from home?
They work during the school holidays. Our teachers don't finish at 3:40. I think making sure that people who have additional responsibilities, care responsibilities, that option is quite good.
How can you be a carer and not work from home?
This is why having a trade union is really important. I was a carer for my late mother.
I was a carer for my sister, my late sister as well.
I work in the office. I was at home taking her to hospital appointments.
Yeah, and of course there are exceptions, but listen.
But you're saying that you want to stop all of that. Today, Reform were working from home because there was a really important debate in the chamber on local government finance, and there were no debate MPs.
So work from home is only so we would not.
When it's convenient for them.
Work from home came about after COVID. Before that, there was no work from home unless you needed it. Yeah, there was. If you needed it, it wasn't. Right now.
People at home cannot hear anything if you all speak over each other, and there's too much of that being going on in this programme. It's probably my fault for not stopping it, but I am going to stop it now. Just on that point. When I ran a publishing company sort of 10 years ago, I would let some of my staff work from home if they were working on a particular book. I just thought they would probably be more productive because
you're a private company and you're working to do what you want.
But it did happen before COVID.
No. And I'm saying in the public sector, it really wasn't as prevalent as it is after COVID.
That's right.
And we do have a productivity issue in the public sector. We are paying more than we ever have into it, and productivity levels are the lowest they've ever been. And I do believe, and Nigel believes as well, that work from home has a factor in that. Since we've had work from home, productivity has gone down in the public sector.
That is a fair point, isn't it, Florence, in that productivity, there's always been a problem in this country. This is not a new thing. But it does seem as though the working from home might have contributed to the recent fall in productivity.
I think what I want to see is employers offering that flexibility to their employees. You can't have a situation where if a employee is requesting to work from home, they've got the right to make that request. This is where it's really important that we have trade union.
But an employer has a right to refuse it as well.
On reasonable grounds, and the employer has that. But I think if we are saying a blanket, we're going to ban working from home, I think that's the wrong approach to take. It's about, by saying we will ban that, you're going to exclude a large proportion of the workforce.
Yeah. I agree, and I'm afraid Nigel was talking about a blanket ban. Private companies can work how they wish.
How do you know what he was talking about?
Because I listened to his speech, and not once did he just talk about public sector workers.
That's what he.
And I have serious problems with.
He's not going to tell a private company what to do.
You've just been told to shut up.
You keep accusing him of things. I'm here to defend.
Well, to be fair, he's right on this because I saw the speech as well.
I know
he was talking about working from home in general.
And I have problems with civil servants working from home. And the fact that we now have a record number of civil servants, it was up by 7,000, I think the last figures I saw it, reflects the reduced productivity, I'm afraid, we're getting out of government. And I think that is linked to working from home. But before COVID, we didn't have Zoom and things like that. So it was very difficult to hold meetings for people who've got office jobs. Now, nobody used Zoom before. It was COVID that changed everybody's working patterns. So it's up to private sector companies to decide how best they want to allow their workers to work in the interest of the company, in the interest of workers' welfare, and in the interest of productivity. And reform's going on about we need growth and productivity. Absolutely. So why are you trying to impose this blanket ban on private companies as well? Let's leave it up to them as to what's best for individual companies.
We have just enough time for our fun question. Chris, thank you for that, by the way. This is from Mary. Would you take back your ex if they begged you to after winning a bronze medal? Now, this is after a Norwegian Winter Olympic sportsman called, this is in far too small a type, you know I'm blind, Sturla Holm. He's now put it up to 25-point size. Sturla Holm Legrid confessed in a live television interview to cheating on his girlfriend moments after winning a bronze medal. And he was a bit emotional about it. Now, we're going to be talking about this after 9, so I'm very interested in all of your views on this. Tim?
What a twit. It didn't work, because I see that his ex-girlfriend has come out and very subtly congratulated the other Norwegian who won the gold medal rather than the bronze medal, which was quite a classy thing to do, and basically told him to get lost.
So I'm sure you've never been in this position, but would you take back a partner who cheated on you?
I've been very happily married for over 33 years. I never had any form of partner. Well, that's another matter altogether, yeah. That's a very good point. Certainly not when I was an MP, probably. Before that, no ex-girlfriend has ever begged me to take her back.
Not even Andrea Leadsom?
Get a bit personal. We remain the greatest of friends.
I don't think that's a secret, is it? I haven't revealed a state secret.
We were colleagues at university.
Colleagues?
Yeah.
That's what they called it then. Florence?
Working from home, yeah.
Many years ago, I was convinced I was going to be an Olympian. I used to, I used to do long jump, high jump. I was a sprinter, and fast forward to London 2012, I was like, that could have been you, but alas, I failed to keep up with the training. No, give me gold, baby. Like, you know, seriously.
Why are we not talking about the ski jumpers injecting acid into their penises? That's a much more interesting story from the Olympics.
Oh, yeah. Trust you, Tim. Trust you.
You haven't heard it?
No.
To make them more aerodynamic. You know those lunatics who come down the slope and then do this. Apparently, if you expand your groin area, it makes you more aerodynamic. And they've caught certain of the athletes injecting acid into their todgers. I mean, extraordinary. Have you not heard this?
No.
Oh, it's
the things you learn on LBC, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm glued to the Olympics.
Okay.
Layla.
Yeah. Are you saying that if a bronze medal would change my mind?
Yeah, I mean, would you take back your ex after they begged you after winning a bronze medal?
Doesn't sound like it.
I mean, you know, it depends.
Be honest.
Depends.
On what?
How much I love them.
How much acid they'd injected?
Yeah. What the prize money is for a bronze medal, perhaps? No, I'm joking. I don't know.
Fair enough. I don't think
Would you?
Would I what?
Take your ex back?
The same question, yeah.
Probably. I think we get sort of hung up a little bit on. Well, I'll explain more in the next hour because we're running very late. But I think we get hung up. No, I better not.
Okay.
Maybe hung up. Right.
Moving on.
Now
we'll bring an end to Carry On Call's question. Thank you all very much for coming on the programme. Let me see if I can scroll down the screen and tell you who's on tomorrow's programme, but I can't because the computer won't let me scroll down.
Why don't we just come back again?
Yeah.
So you'll find out tomorrow anyway. Right, coming up in the next hour, we are going to talk more about this Norwegian cross-country skier who won a bronze medal. Was tipped to win a gold, but I think he was slightly distracted because immediately afterwards he admitted that he'd had an extramarital, affair, bonk, whatever you want to call it, and he's hopeful that his girlfriend is going to take him back. she's apparently made clear that she's not going to take him back. So that set me wondering, have you ever taken back somebody who has been who's betrayed you, basically, betrayed your trust? Could you ever trust them again? And if you did take them back, how much did they have to grovel?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, the person behind Canada's worst mass murder in years was 18 years old. Police say Jesse Van Roostelaar was born male and transitioning, killed 5 students and a teacher at a secondary school in British Columbia before dying from a self-inflicted wound. Earlier, 2 people were found dead in a house nearby. Local Commander Dwayne MacDonald also explains why the total number of fatalities has been reduced from 10 to 9.
Initially, it was believed that one of the victims, a female with significant injuries, had succumbed to her injuries. Police have since confirmed that is not the case. She is alive and was one of the 2 female victims that were airlifted to the hospital.
Kemi Badenoch has accused the Prime Minister of stuffing government with hypocrites and paedophile apologists. Sir Keir Starmer claims his former Director of Communications didn't give a full account of his ties to a former Labour councillor who was a paedophile. Lord Doyle apologised and had the whip removed yesterday. His Lib Dem leader, Sir Ed Davey.
To appoint one paedophile supporter cannot be excused as misfortune. To appoint 2 shows a catastrophic lack of judgment.
A stabbing at a North London school is being called an extraordinary one-off event by detectives. They've confirmed yesterday's attack was not terrorist-related. They say a 13-year-old suspect is a former pupil. Police investigating allegations against Andrew Mountbatten Windsor have been speaking to specialist prosecutors. It's claimed he passed on confidential information to Jeffrey Epstein. He's denied any wrongdoing. And the actor James Van Der Beek, who played the lead role in American teen drama Dawson's Creek, has died. He was 48 and had bowel cancer. LBC's Joe Hawkins looks back at his life.
James Van Der Beek became a heartthrob as a starry-eyed wannabe filmmaker, Dawson Leary, in Dawson's Creek. His will-he, won't-he romance with Joey Potter, played by young Katie Holmes, won big audiences.
All that matters right now is what you want.
I don't even know what I want.
Yes, you do. You want him. You want him like I want you. You love him like I love you.
There were other roles in US TV dramas like One Tree Hill and CSI. He leaves behind second wife Kimberly and their 6 children.
In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed up 118 points at 10,472. The pound buys $1.36 and €1.14. LBC weather, windy with patchy rain in the north tonight. Some showers for southern areas, lows of 0. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 5 minutes past 9. Calmness has been restored to the LBC studio after the disgraceful antics of the last few minutes, let's put it that way. Now, I want to talk about the most human of relationships now, because I think whenever you are in a reasonably long-term relationship, by which I mean sort of maybe over a year, and you suddenly find that your partner, your wife, your husband has cheated on you, it's an incredible shock, isn't it? And I don't know what percentage of people listening now have had that happen to them, but I would suggest that it's probably 20%, 30%, higher than that. I don't know. Because human beings, being human beings, do have a tendency to wander. Some people have a much higher sex drive than others, and therefore they think, oh, well, a little dabble here and there, that won't hurt as long as the other person doesn't find out, it'll all be fine. And then they do find out. And then there's a lot of contrition, there are a lot of tears, a lot of deep and meaningful conversations, and the injured party has to decide whether to take the person who's committed the act of infidelity back or not. And if they do take them back, how much they're going to make them grovel. And that's really my question to you tonight. I just want to, because I'm a nosy kind of person, I want to hear your own experience of this, where you have suddenly found out that your partner, who you trusted, who you love, has betrayed you. Can you forgive that? Somebody here is saying 70%, they think it is. I'm not sure it's that high. Can you forgive? How do you forgive? Is the relationship ever the same again? Do you make sure that you, as the injured party, make sure the other person has to grovel to come back? And does the dynamic of the relationship change after that? Can it ever be the same again? 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. Well, why am I talking about this, I hear you ask? Well, the Norwegian Olympian Sturla Holm Laigrid has confessed in a live television interview to cheating on his girlfriend moments after winning a bronze medal. I think the confession was moments after. I don't think he cheated moments after. That would have been a bit strenuous, wouldn't it? Laigrid finished in third place in the biathlon, which combines cross-country skiing and rifle shooting, and then broke down in tears at the Winter Olympics on Tuesday.
For et halvt år siden så møtte jeg mitt livs kjærlighet. Verdens vakreste, fineste person. Og for 3 måneder siden så gjorde jeg min største tabbe og var utro mot henne. Og det fortalte jeg for en uke siden. Og det har vært den verste uken i mitt liv. Så jeg hadde gullmedalje i livet. Det var sikkert bare mange der nå som ser på meg med andre øyne. Men jeg har kun øyne for henne.
Now, for those of you who don't speak Norwegian, let me tell you what he just said. And as you heard, I mean, you could tell it was quite emotional. He said, 6 months ago, I met the love of my life, the most beautiful, wonderful person in the world. 3 months ago, I made the worst mistake of my life. I cheated on her. I told her a week ago, and that's all I've been thinking about all week. It's been the worst week of my life. I had a gold medal in life, and I let it go. I'm sure there are people who think of me differently now, but I only have eyes for her. Now, I'm not sure there whether he was talking about her as the equivalent of a gold medal, or whether he sort of thinks, or thought, well, I would have got a gold medal had I not been so obsessed by this. I think it's probably the former. Well, today he addressed the controversy at a press conference, and thankfully he was speaking English.
We make different choices during our life, and that's how you make life, basically. So today I made the choice to tell the world what I did. So maybe there's a chance that she will see what she really means to me. And maybe not. But I don't want to think I didn't try everything to get her back.
So who knows what's going to happen here? Apparently she has now congratulated the gold medalist, so that doesn't bode well for him getting her back, I suppose. Now that's not a long-term relationship, but the fact that he cheated on her after only 3 months, that probably tells her all she needs to know, doesn't it? I mean, once a cheater, always a cheater. Maybe that's a thing that you can sort of just say is a bit of a trite thing to say. But leopards don't always change their spots, do they? What's been your experience of being cheated on? 0345 6060 973. Deborah says, Diddums, I don't feel sorry for him at all. And let's not make this a sort of a men-hating session, which if my colleague from my podcast, Tessa Dunlop, was here, I'm sure it would become. Because, I mean, scandal of scandals, women cheat as well. I know, that's a revelation, isn't it? I suspect that I don't know what the frequency of men cheating compared to women cheating, but I'm not sure there'd be much difference. Well, let's talk to Kate Mansfield, relationship coach and creator of The Love School. Well, before we start, what is The Love School, Kate?
Hi. Well, it's a school that teaches people about healthy relationships primarily. So I work with single people and couples to help them improve their love lives. And a big part of that actually is obviously around the topic of cheating and infidelity. And, you know, how do we continually sort of stay in love with a partner over time in a long-term relationship? Is that even possible? So it's absolutely a very topical thing. And it's interesting you picked up about women, because statistically now we are seeing more women than men cheating.
Wow,
actually.
More?
Yes. It's usually been a bit neck and neck, but it's just, I think, recently overtaken. There's been a couple of different studies where, and certainly I'm seeing that with couples that come to me. And I think lots of women are also asking for divorce and leaving long-term relationships. So I think it ties in, I think, with just, more equality in the workplace, women being financially more self-supporting. And so I think we're in a bit of a crisis when it comes to long-term relationships between men and women, actually. But that may be for another show.
Well, it may be. Do you think it's partly that people are finding it easier to find out if their partner cheats on them? I suspect, and again, I've got no evidence for this, but I suspect mobile phones have a big role to play in. I mean, your partner leaves their mobile phone around, you have a quick look at it, and you discover things that maybe you shouldn't have discovered, or they didn't want you to discover.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think mobile phones play a part in that. There are certain sort of things where there are certain signs, like if your partner constantly puts their mobile phone face down, so you can't see messages coming through. There's sort of signs that to look out for if you suspect your partner's cheating. So that's a part of it. But interestingly, and I did do a bit of research before the show, actually. Interestingly, apparently, almost half of all cheaters do confess. Which is fascinating to me. But I think the motivation is probably more about either anger or guilt, or getting their partner back, actually, than it is possibly about being honest.
Is it inevitable that the relationship changes after that moment, that you've been going on for maybe several years, maybe 10 years in a very seemingly happy relationship, and you probably both are very happy in that relationship, but then something happens, one of you cheats, confesses, and I would imagine that things are never the same again.
Well, that's true, but actually, and this is one of the things that I help couples with specifically, and it sounds a weird thing to say, because obviously it's very traumatic and very hurtful, but sometimes it can be, the end of a bad relationship and the beginning of a new, better one for that couple. That requires a huge amount of self-reflection and forgiveness. And so it's not an easy journey. But I think, we often assume that cheating is about sex. It rarely is. It's usually much more complex than that. I think it's important to say as well that there are different types of cheating. There's kind of serial cheaters who perhaps have a pattern and a problem with cheating outside of their relationships. That's kind of, a personality trait or a trauma issue. And then there is sort of situational cheating, where someone gets drunk and it's a one-off and they're deeply regretful. And there is a difference between those two things. So I think we have to look at the context and some of the nuances with cheating, because there isn't just a one rule fits all,
And what about this whole new concept, which I think in gay world has been apparent for quite a long time, but in straight world, I think it's probably only been in the last few years that a lot of people do this, where you have a so-called open relationship, where you both agree that as long as you don't involve yourself emotionally with someone else, it's okay to basically have a random bonk.
Yeah, I mean, lots of couples do that now. I think we're seeing much more of that. Obviously, there was a big swathe of that in the 70s. My parents were examples of that a little bit, and then it sort of, revolved.
God, I hope they're not listening.
To monogamy. But I think, with infidelity rates so high, it's around 40%. I think there is a tougher question, and it's a bit depressing in the lead up to Valentine's Day, but, is our expectation of lifelong monogamy fundamentally flawed? And are we setting ourselves up for failure by ignoring human nature? I mean, I think, after sort of 10, 15, 20 years with the same person, certainly couples make it work, and it can, people can have amazing sex lives. I think it does involve doing some work, though, and again, that's what I do. Particularly, I work with athletes and footballers often. Actually, those are typically my clients. So it's been a really interesting week in the athletic world with this big confession. But I think we do need to have more honest conversations. about what a realistic modern relationship looks like that is fulfilling to both people in it.
Do you have a website? How can people enrol in the Love School?
Yes, it's just katemansfield.com. So if anyone's interested, pop over there and have a read of what I do.
Fantastic, Kate. Thank you very much indeed. That's Kate Mansfield, relationship coach and creator of The Love School. Right. As I said at the beginning, I kind of want to just hear your experiences in this hour and your views of, that last point that Kate raised there about monogamy. As human beings, are we actually set up for monogamy? Isn't monogamy something that we've been taught by society is the right thing to do? Is there a religious angle to this that it's frowned upon by all religions, I suppose? But as human beings, we're not actually bred to be monogamous. Is that a controversial thing to say? 0345 6060 973. It's 18 minutes past 9.
This is LBC.
If you
9 on LBC, we're talking about infidelity on the basis of this Norwegian Olympic biathlete, is that the right word, who has won a bronze medal at the Winter Olympics. Are you watching the Winter Olympics? I love winter sports. Shame I can't do any anymore. And he has confessed in a very sort of blubbering speech at a press conference that he's cheated on his girlfriend. We can talk about the ethics of doing that because he's basically made it all about him and trying to make people feel sorry for him. I'm not sure really that anyone should feel sorry for him. Clearly his girlfriend, or possibly ex-girlfriend, wasn't very impressed with his antics, quite right too. And so it looks as if that she has dumped him on the basis of what he's done. He's obviously completely bereft by it. But if you were so deeply in love with somebody, why would you even think about cheating on them? Or does it just go back to that sort of human instinct that I was talking about, where there are some people that are just made differently to others and basically can't keep it in their trousers if they're men, obviously. But as we just heard from Kate Mansfield, this is something that is not just that men are prone to, which I think is probably the stereotype. If you'd asked me before the programme what percentage of men cheat and what percentage of women, I would have thought it was probably double the rate for men than women. But we heard there from Kate Mansfield that actually more women cheat on men than the other way around. I think we can be very, very judgmental about other people, particularly if we know them. Sort of the how could you do that attitude, I think, is very prevalent among people. We're all very judgmental. And then, of course, you get, if it all comes out, and then friends take sides, don't they? And that's a difficult thing, I think, for each person to deal with. And again, the friendship dynamic changes. 0345 6060 973. Well, let's take this text here. 14 years ago, he left me many times. I took him back to then find out he was having a relationship with someone else. I kept believing, even after this, that it was over, probably because it's knocked me down in many ways. It's destroyed me. This went on for years and years. I'm a shadow of my former self. I don't go out. I've now managed to finally get rid of him, but I don't think I will ever meet anyone again. Kids have their own lives now. LBC is a lifeline for me. Well, in a way, I want to apologise to you for sort of bringing this all back to you in a way, but it's inevitable when you talk about this kind of subject that it will bring back some very unhappy memories for some people who have been scarred for life by the way that they've been treated by the person that they thought was going to be their life partner, but turns out to be not the person that they thought they knew. And I really feel for people in that position. I mean, it is never, it can never be a pleasant experience to go through that. Let's take this text here. It's from, well, I'm not going to give the name on these initially. I'll read them out and then give the name if it's appropriate. Please, could we not forget that some people have affairs because they're truly unhappy in their relationships. Not all partners are blameless victims. It doesn't make having an affair any less hurtful to the person you're married to, but it's not just a simplistic choice between someone being a serial cheat or getting drunk one night. Sometimes people are seeking comfort and for escape, and sometimes people just fall truly in love with someone they're not married to. Well, I think that is a perfectly reasonable way of putting it, because every circumstance is different. There is no one size fits all here. And how does anyone really judge somebody else's relationship? We don't know what goes on behind closed doors. There may be a perfectly valid reason for one part of that partnership to go looking elsewhere, whether it is purely for sex or whether it's purely because you're not getting any kind of emotion from your partner. You've maybe become, I don't know, best friends rather than the sort of passionate people that you were when you first met. That I think happens in a huge number of relationships. So have you had this happen to you where you've discovered that your partner has been having an affair? You've discovered it. You've tried to think, well, how do I handle this? Do I want to take them back? Then you do take them back. But how do the conversations go? I mean, let's look at it from the other point of view as well, from the person having the affair. As Kate Mansfield said there, lots of people confess to their partners that they have had an affair. I mean, how does that conversation go? And I would love to bring some personal experience into this, but I've never had that conversation, so I can't. I'm glad I can't. But it must be the most difficult conversation to approach. There are other difficult conversations, I suppose. I mean, I remember a phone-in I did years and years ago on LBC where I was saying to women, how have you found out that your husband's gay? And, I mean, that must be an even more difficult conversation than this one, but let's not get diverted down that road too quickly. But how do you approach this with a partner? Do you just come out with it? Do you just say, can you sit down? I've got something to tell you, and then you blurt it out? I mean, there's no easy way of saying something like this, is there? How have you had that conversation? Or how have you had the conversation if you are the injured party, where you found out that your partner has been having an affair and had to confront them with it? I mean, we see all of this happen in TV dramas, but unless you've had it happen to you in real life, I suspect we all have a sort of imagined scenario, don't we? 0345 6060 973. Let's go to Valerie in Falkirk. Hello, Valerie.
Hello, Ian. Thank you for taking my call.
Not at all. What would you like to tell me?
Well, I've been on both sides, and basically it comes down to who you are as a person. It doesn't matter what gender or anything. It depends on your heart and soul. And if you're not happy in a relationship, then leave. You know, I know it's easy and it sounds blasé for me to say that, but...
Well, I mean, when you say if you're not happy, if you're maybe only unhappy with one aspect of your relationship...
Well, then communicate.
Ah, well, that's a very...
Communication is very key to solving most problems.
Yeah.
Whatever ship it is, relationship, friendship, you know, communication is key. If you're not happy, speak. And if you can't feel you speak, write them a letter. You know, sometimes as long as you communicate how you feel, then there's a way forward. But if you bottle it up and it gets to the point where you're just shouting and screaming and nothing gets heard, then you're not going to get anywhere.
Can I ask if you've got personal experience of this?
Well, yes. On both sides. I was cheated on and have cheated. So that's why I'm so philosophical.
and the fact...
I spend a lot of time thinking and re-enumerating on the mistakes that I've made, and maybe too much because, but I don't trust anyone anymore, so I don't put myself out there. I won't get myself hurt, so...
And can I ask what happened when each found out?
Well, no one found out. I mean... There's always signs. There's always little... Everyone has a tell. You just read body language. It's just learning. It's knowing your partner. You know, there's every little thing adds up. And don't think you're going mad if someone says, oh, you're mad, you're just... That's an instant red flag, you know, because that's deflecting. You know, just try it. All I can say is communication and honesty. And if you're not happy, then... Especially if you've got kids, he doesn't want to get to the stage where he's shouting and screaming and kids are hiding in their rooms and stuff like that. That was my childhood, and a lot other besides, but we don't want to go there. So All I'm saying is communication.
No, I think that is very wise advice. Thank you very much, Valerie. Alison's... No, it's not. Is it Alison? Anyway, my ex-husband cheated on me while I was pregnant with our much-wanted third child. You see, that really is quite unforgivable, isn't it? I stupidly forgave him, but a couple of years later, he was spotted hand in hand with another female. So I gave up on him. True saying, once a cheat, always a cheat. I mean, that's a horrible thing to happen. I was watching, when I got home last night, I was watching a programme called Trial and Retribution, and there was a plot there where a baby had been murdered, and the mother, it turned out that the father of the child had left the mother while she was pregnant. And okay, it was a drama, but I mean, that must be the most awful thing to happen, to discover that your partner has been cheating while you're pregnant. I mean, I was going to say I can't imagine anything worse than that, but that would be about the third time I've said that. Right, let's take this text. It says, I'm 48 and single by choice. I've been in 5 long-term relationships, all of which ended in him cheating. I walked away the same day and never looked back. I was married, and on my 1-year anniversary, I bought my husband an iPad 16 years ago. At the end of the night, they put the iPad on charge in the kitchen and went to bed. Clearly didn't realise the iPad had synced with the iPhone that he was in bed with, texting his colleagues to whom he was having an affair. His colleague to whom he was having an affair. Oops. Yep, you could say that. So we'll take more of your calls in the next half an hour. So your stories of being cheated on, or maybe you were the one that was doing the cheating. How did you always feel guilty while you were cheating? And if you did take the cheater back, how much did you make them grovel? And did it change the relationship in the long term? I mean, surely it's inevitable that it does. In a moment, we'll be talking about Pam Bondi, who's clashed with the House Judiciary Committee in the United States over the Epstein files. And it got quite juicy, that. So Simon Marks will be revealing all in just a moment. It's 9:30 on LBC. Let's get the latest news headlines with Daryl Jackson. 9:33. This is an interesting phone-in the sense that we're getting absolutely hundreds of texts and WhatsApp messages. Not so many calls, though. Now, I wonder why that would be. Now, if you are reluctant to phone in because we can change your name. Because it would be quite good to hear a few experiences of what people go through, rather than me just reading out a litany of texts and WhatsApp messages. 0345 6060 973. I mean, let's not just talk about if you are the cheater or the person being cheated on. Let's sort of widen it out a bit and look at whether you think that as human beings we're actually made for a world of monogamy, because that's how we've all been taught to behave down the generations. But that is increasingly less the case, I think, in all sorts of different kinds of relationships. Certainly over the last few years, I think there are many people now who just have a conversation where they agree that as long as the other one doesn't get emotionally involved with somebody else, they're free to have sex with somebody else, which to most people will sound horrific. But there's no denying that is happening, and it's not just in gay relationships that happens nowadays. So are we actually set up for monogamy? And is it always just about sex, or is it you other things that you can't find in your existing relationship that you feel you need to look for elsewhere? 0345 6060 973. And if you've got an open relationship and you're happy to talk about it, we'd love to hear about that too. But first, let's cross live to Washington, D.C., where there have been antics, Simon, at the House Judiciary Committee.
The most unedifying thing I've ever seen in Washington, D.C., and that's going back more than 30 years, Iain. I mean, I think it's really important to put all of this into its constitutional context. Congress has a responsibility and a constitutional requirement to hold the president's cabinet members accountable for their actions. And today, one of the zealots and sycophants in the president's cabinet, Attorney General Pam Bondi, was brought before the House of Representatives Judiciary Committee to testify. And of course, members of the committee, Republicans and Democrats, had lots of questions for her about the way in which she's running the Department of Justice, the way in which she has turned it into a personal tool of Donald Trump's retribution, the way in which her Department of Justice released 3 million pages of Epstein documents just a few days ago and managed not properly to redact thousands of pages so that personal information relating to Epstein's victims was inadvertently released, the way in which she and other members of her team falsely characterized Renee Good and Alex Pretty, the two American citizens gunned down in Minneapolis by ICE and the Border Patrol, as domestic terrorists. And what we have witnessed over the last several hours is the Attorney General of the United States sullying her own position, playing games with members of Congress, engaging in utter disdain, not just towards them, but towards the entire process of accountability that these congressional committees exist to enforce. Take a listen to the exchange between Congressman Gerald Nadler of New York and the Attorney General. It's about the Epstein files, and I have left it completely unedited so you can hear the very long silence between the congressman asking his question, the Attorney General eventually getting round to the idea of beginning perhaps to answer it, and the silence that you hear is the sound of America's constitutional checks and balances being laid waste by a senior member of Donald Trump's cabinet.
How many of Epstein's co-conspirators have you indicted? How many perpetrators are you even investigating?
First, you showed it. I find it.
How many have you indicted?
Excuse me. I'm going to answer the question.
Answer my question.
No, I'm going to answer the question the way I want to answer the question.
No,
Your
you're
theatrics
the
are
question
ridiculous.
the way I asked it.
Chairman Jordan, I'm not going to get in the gutter with these people, but I'm going to answer the question.
How many have you indicted?
Again, the time belongs to
Reclaiming my time.
The time belongs.
I think it's very interesting.
Reclaiming my time.
I think it's very interesting.
You can reclaim your
talks
time.
about they indicted. The president said they indicted him twice.
Mr. Chairman, please stop the clock and restore his time.
Okay, here we go with these theatrics.
And she behaved like that not only towards Democrats, but towards some Republicans as well, including Congressman Thomas Massie of Kentucky, who is one of the Republicans on Capitol Hill, who has been pushing the Trump administration for months to come up with a full set of documents relating to Epstein and release them into the public domain. He, like many Democrats, accuses Pam Bondi of withholding another 3 million pages of documents, and he wants to know what's in them. She tussled with him. She called him a political loser. Tonight, Thomas Massie has put out a statement saying she didn't answer anything. She came here ready to talk about the Dow Jones and the NASDAQ, because indeed she did constantly cite President Trump's storied achievements over the last year, including the soaring value of the stock market that she said the committee members should be celebrating rather than digging into issues pertaining to Jeffrey Epstein. Thomas Massie describing her as kind of crazy. And indeed, there was an astonishing moment early in the hearings when Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal of Washington State asked the Attorney General to stand up and apologize to a group of Epstein victims who were in the room, who were all asked to stand, and asked how many of them had not been able to secure a single meeting with Pam Bondi's Department of Justice. And every single one of them raised their hands. And the Attorney General wouldn't turn round, wouldn't look at them, and treated them with exactly the same degree of disdain that she was offering throughout these hours of hearings towards, as I say, members of Congress from both sides of the aisle that dared to try and hold her accountable for her actions.
Simon, thank you very much for that. Now, you've also got some news about the Gallup polling agency. What's going on there?
Well, absolutely astonishing news today, Iain, from Gallup, which, as you know, has for 90 years been conducting polls here in the United States, obviously many of them political in nature. Gallup has announced today that it is going to stop, after 9 decades, it is going to stop recording the approval ratings of American presidents. This change, says Gallup, is part of a broader ongoing effort to align all of Gallup's public work with its mission. We look forward to continuing to offer independent research that adheres to the highest standards of social science. It is being widely noted here that this decision comes a matter of weeks after Donald Trump's approval rating in the Gallup poll was among the lowest that the organisation had ever recorded since it began asking that question, do you approve or disapprove of the president's performance in office since the 1930s. And the polling company, when asked if it had been put under any pressure by the Trump administration, simply said this is a strategic shift solely based on Gallup's research goals and priorities. So no more approval ratings being measured by the Gallup polling company, which will come as very good news for an American president whose approval rating is very much in the doldrums.
Other polling companies are available, I guess, Simon.
They are, and they will continue to record President Trump's approval rating unless others decide to follow Gallup's suit and to avoid possible future confrontation with the White House by deciding that it's better not to ask the question in the first place.
Simon, thank you very much indeed. That's Simon Marks, our US correspondent, talking to us live from Washington. Right, let's go back to our phone-in. We're talking about cheating after this Winter Olympian won a bronze medal and at the press conference broke down in tears and confessed to cheating on his girlfriend of 6 months. After 3 months, she seems to have dumped him now, which will upset him even more, no doubt. So we're asking for your experience of either cheating or being cheated on. Let's go to Suki in Walsall. Hello, Suki.
Hello, how's my favourite presenter?
I'm very well, thank you. How's my favourite listener?
Oh, I'm good, thank you.
Right, what have you got to tell me?
I think dealing with cheating depends a lot on your background as well.
In what way?
I had quite a difficult background growing up. I didn't have that dad that treated me like a princess, and I had no older brothers to look out for me. So when I was looking for a partner, I was looking for that maybe. And then when my first serious partner cheated on me, the devastation was, well, it was hard. It was hard. It was really tough. And then it impacted my future relationship in the sense that I didn't have that trust because I was waiting for it to happen again. And my next relationship, he was really good. But as soon as he mentioned ex-girlfriends or anything to do with other women, I would be on guard straight away.
Why?
Because my previous partner cheated on me with his ex.
Okay.
Who he was in contact with, and I was always a little bit like, oh, that's a little bit too much that you're doing for that person. And it was always like, no, we're just still friends. It's nothing like that. It's just, I'm just helping her out. And then that ended up happening. And you almost feel like you're being overly paranoid and there's nothing there, and then there was. So that's just my personal experience. I just think it depends on your personal situation, how well you deal with it.
And you say this still affects you to this day?
I think so. I've got better. I think I gave my current partner quite a hard time in the first couple of years, but we've been together 15 years now, so I've got better at it. I've got better at trusting and being less worried. But yeah, it still does impact me because he was really the.
Well, I think you should be proud that your relationship has lasted 15 years. There aren't that. I mean, I say there aren't that many people that can say that. Of course, there are many, but I mean, I do think that's an achievement.
I think I've worked at it. I think I've reflected and analysed. I did psychology at uni, so I think I've worked at why I feel and react the way I do. And you know, I think I've looked back at, well, hang on, what was my upbringing like? What was I missing when I was a child? Did I not have that security? So yeah, I think I've tried hard not to give him a hard time.
Well, Suki, thank you for phoning in, and thank you for sort of telling us about your situation. Judging from my text screen here, there are quite a few people who really empathise with you, have been in similar situations. Kenny says, I was a bit promiscuous. Can you be a bit promiscuous? You either are promiscuous or you're not, aren't you? When I was married, I think I was following our great leaders. Well, that's one excuse for it. Like the king. Unfortunately, I left off with your head, Kenny. Unfortunately, I left the relationship with sadness and a little despair in my heart and our spare house. Don't get that. She got the big one and the new car. I'm heading for 70 years young and still feel a bit guilty. We'll come back to more of your calls and texts in just a moment. It's 9:47.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Ben Kentish.
The King speaks out about the allegations surrounding his brother Andrew, but is it too little too late? Plus, why the owner of
Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
10 to 10 on LBC. Barry is in New Cumnock. Hello, Barry.
Hi, Ian. Hope you're well. Ian, I phoned during Christmas Day and told you it was my first Christmas without my family.
I remember, Barry.
Yeah, and I couldn't tell you why, but I'm going to tonight, Ian. I've suffered with trauma and mental health all my life due to childhood. And I was diagnosed years ago with a sex and love addiction. And I've never physically cheated on my wife, ever. I just couldn't do it. But I went online and I deceived women online and with someone else, which I feel guilty for, and had sexual conversations, Ian. My wife found out so many times and took me back until she just couldn't take any more. And my wife suffered with trauma because of my behaviour, which wasn't acceptable, Ian.
But you didn't actually cheat?
Physically, no. Emotionally, hundreds of times.
But how I mean, you say you were diagnosed with a sex addiction, but I mean, that doesn't really compute, does it? If you didn't actually go through with anything.
But sex addiction comes in many forms, Ian. It comes in pornography. It comes in, sexual gratifications through conversations with people. It takes many different forms. But I've damaged someone that I thought was the love of my life. I mean, 20 years we're together. And I damaged that. But I also know now that I should have left a long time ago to work on me and my problems so that I didn't damage my wife and my children as well, because they've been hurt through it as well with the arguments. And emotional cheating is a thing, Ian, and it's worse than physical, I believe, because going through the act, you can sort of forgive because you've got that thing. But when you emotionally cheat on someone time and time again, that has a psychological impact on them.
I think this is really interesting because, look, I'm not a counsellor. I can't diagnose things, but that is not my definition of sex addiction.
I've been diagnosed by a psychologist, and I've been through 12-step programs, Ian. And I'm out the other end of it. I'm happy to hold my hands up and say I'm out the other end of it. And I'm very new into a relationship of, 2 weeks. But I'm taking that slowly so that I don't damage someone else, because that's important to me now. I cannot take baggage to someone else's door.
So okay, it's a new relationship, so you probably haven't done this, but do you intend to tell this person about what's happened in the past?
I've already done it, Ian.
And what was the reaction?
They were... The phrase was, yesterday's history, tomorrow's a mystery. Today's a gift. That's why it's the present. That is exactly what they said to me.
I mean, in some ways that's quite profound. In other ways, it's a bit simplistic.
Yeah, I understand that. But as I said to this person, that I am going to take it slow, and that any red flags, and I walk straight away, because I cannot do that to anyone. Because I am taking the mature approach now, rather than trying to heal my heart by hurting other people.
Well, it's been very brave of you to have this conversation, and it's exactly the kind of conversation I wanted to have at the beginning of the hour. So, Barry, thank you very much. I imagine it took a little bit of courage to pick up the phone tonight, so thank you very much for doing that. Let's go to Zach, who's a first-time caller in Cheltenham. Hello, Zach.
Good evening, Ian.
Evening.
How long have we got?
Well, we've got about 4.5 minutes.
Okay. I'll be as quick as I can. My second marriage started in 2006. I came with a bit of baggage, 2 young children. My partner my second wife was much younger than me, and I got it. I had a nice lifestyle, so that kind of counteracted the children. And after about a year together, this thing called Facebook had been invented. And I came home one day from work. My wife was probably the hairdressers as per normal. And the family computer, I heard like a ping noise. So I turned on the computer and I saw this thing called Facebook, which was in its infancy then.
Yep.
And I saw the message light flash up. I had no suspicions. I was just naturally curious, and I pressed on this. And I noticed that my ex-wife and this local chap, who just so happens to be a very, very extremely wealthy man, were messaging each other. And my first thought was, because I brought up in a very old-fashioned way, why is my wife messaging another man and telling him what a wonderful dancer he is? I was just kind of so innocent, even though I was in my 40s. And I did a screenshot of the conversation. It was getting a bit more fruity after each message. And it was just I just couldn't understand it. So I contacted my wife. I said, it's probably best you finish your hair cut or whatever you're doing and come home. And I just showed her this screenshot. And her first thing is obviously being very defensive. Well, this is nothing inappropriate. So I said, well, that's nonsense. Unless you agree that it's inappropriate, I'm leaving home. I'm saying I'm leaving my own home. It was mine. So I moved into a hotel, and she was calling me every day. And we just could not agree the way forward. So eventually I thought, I've got to break this circle we're going in. I'll tell you what, we'll take your name out of this screenshot. We'll take the guy's name out of the screenshot, so they're completely anonymous, and we'll show your friends. And they won't notice you, and say, what do you think about this conversation? And she said, no, they can't do that. Okay, I'll apologise. Come home. So I did. And for the next 10 years, I despised her. I never trusted her. I stayed before the kids, and more often than not, I was in the spare room. And in fact, the only time we ever kind of really got on was when we were abroad. And I think that was kind of a disconnection from where events took place. And then finally, in 2017, I discovered she was more than having conversations or fruity conversations with a man. She was actually having an affair. And in a way, I was slightly relieved, because I could get closure. But it was a horrible feeling.
So presumably you've now split up.
Oh, we split up in 2017. Cost me £1 million in settlement, plus another £500,000 in legal fees. And despite us having 2 young children, from that date, I've never spoken to her a word.
Well, that is a very sad story, Zach. I'd like to continue the conversation, but Ben Kentish will be very angry with me, so I'm not going to. But thank you very much for picking up the phone and telling us that rather sad, well, very sad story. Now, if you missed any of today's show, you can catch up on both Global Player and the LBC app. Download both for free from your app store right now. Coming up at 1 on LBC, it's James Hansen, but now it's time for Ben Kentish.
Iain, I'd never be angry with you. Thank you very much indeed, though. Hello, a very good evening to you. Ben Kentish here on LBC. Coming up,
truth, integrity, and the pursuit of justice should be non-negotiable, and we will no longer negotiate with people or institutions that fail us.
King Charles finally speaks out about the allegations surrounding his brother Andrew. Buckingham Palace saying this week that the King has profound concerns about recent